Chapter 832. At the city gates of Profound Mountain City. Miss Blue Heart, please wait. Yu Haoran couldn't help but smile bitterly as he stopped Blue Heart when he saw her send him nearly 1.5 kilometers away from the city gates. Haoran, let Exa send you for a while longer, all right? Blue Heart gently brushed the hair on her forehead in the face of Yu Haoran's attempt to stop her. Her tone was unusually gentle as she pleaded. In the face of this kind of tenderness, it was understandable that he couldn't bear to reject it twice. If he continued to indulge himself and be moved by her tenderness, not only would he delay his journey to the Four-Symbol sect, but he would also draw her closer and closer to him. It wouldn't be good for her to find her own happiness in the future. Therefore, Yu Haoran put away the smile on his face and said with a cold expression, "Miss Blue Heart, there's really no need to send me off. I'll take my leave." After that, he channeled his soul power and was about to soar into the sky when Blue Heart suddenly raised her hand to indicate that she had something to say. "Miss Blue Heart, is there anything else?" Since he had decided to leave, he couldn't drag things out. Therefore, Yu Haoran didn't immediately leave when Blue Heart waved at him. However, his feet left the ground to indicate that he was about to leave. "Yu Haoran, Father has already agreed to give Profound Island Lake to me. I plan to build an elegant courtyard by the lake and study the ways to cook the three-tailed striped fish." Yu Haoran's actions didn't make Blue Heart unhappy at all. She still gently lifted her head to remind Yu Haoran. "Therefore, I hope that you can give me a time to return to Profound Mountain City so that I can have a taste of Exa and Er's culinary skills and truly understand what kind of woman you are." Building an elegant courtyard and studying culinary skills. Blue Heart was no different from a woman in love. However, he hadn't given her any promises. Yu Haoran couldn't help but sigh in the face of Blue Heart's passion. However, he knew that he couldn't reject her passion. Moreover, his agreement with the Blue Flood Dragon required him to return to Tiny Island Lake in the future. Therefore, when he soared into the sky, Yu Haoran also guaranteed his time. "Blue Heart, in 2 years and 1 month, I will definitely return to Tiny Island Lake. At that time, not only will I enjoy the three-tailed striped fish that you have carefully developed, but I will also give you a chance to be reborn." Although Yu Haoran had finally agreed on a time, 2 years and 1 month was too long for Blue Heart. She felt that she couldn't bear to miss him for such a long time. Therefore, she also planned to soar into the sky and beg Yu Haoran to shorten the time limit. But at this moment, Lan Weisheng suddenly appeared in front of her and stretched out his hand to press on her shoulder. He shook his head and reminded her, "Exian, you can't be too hasty when it comes to matters of the heart. Otherwise, it will backfire. Father, 2 years is too long. I'm really worried that some unpredictable changes will happen during this time." The astute Blue Heart understood her father's advice very well. She also knew that this would make her seem very frivolous. However, she also knew that an outstanding man like Yu Haoran would definitely attract many beautiful and outstanding women to pursue him. She didn't want a third woman to come between them before the two of them had a real relationship. "Exian, I have a way to see Yu Haoran a year earlier, but you will need to train as hard as you can." How could Lan Weisheng not know what his daughter was worried about? However, he also knew very well. For a genius like Yu Haoran, who had the potential to be a top genius, beauty and family background were secondary if she wanted to gain his approval and stay by his side. The most important thing was to be able to follow his footsteps on the martial way. After all, the higher one's cultivation, the longer one's lifespan. He couldn't possibly find a woman who only had 500 years of lifespan when he had 5,000 years of lifespan. "Father, you're talking about the Hidden Dragon ranking battle that will be held in Hidden Dragon City a year later, right?" Training as hard as she could to increase her cultivation and strength. Then, what was the point of increasing her cultivation and strength? Blue Heart, who had been paying attention to the situation in the southern region, quickly guessed her father's plan. That's right. Lan Weisheng was gratified by his daughter's extraordinary intelligence, but he also felt a tinge of regret. If Blue Heart was a man, then with her potential and intelligence, the Lan family would have a great chance of entering the capital city and participating in the upcoming battle for fortune in the Emperor Qin's kingdom. Father, I'll return to the city first. Thinking about the requirements of cultivation and strength to participate in the hidden dragon ranking, Blueheart knew that she still had a long way to go. After bidding farewell to her father, she immediately turned around and returned to the governor's residence. Yu Haoran, the hidden dragon ranking battle isn't just a battle for reputation. It's also a battle for fortune. I wonder if you can make it into the top 100 and then represent the southern region to divide the fortune of the entire Tianxin continent. Lan Weisheng didn't pay attention to Blueheart, who had suddenly returned to the governor's residence. He raised his head and looked in the direction that Yu Haoran had left. Collecting the blue flood dragon's essence blood and He Xiong's accidental coma had already taken up a lot of time. Therefore, after leaving Weishan City, Yu Haoran and He Xiong took turns flying. In the end, it took them half a day and a night to successfully arrive at a mountain peak about 50 kilometers away from the Four Symbols sect. Sitting cross-legged on a green rock at the peak of the mountain, he took out a message glyph that Emperor Qin had given him before he left Xianying City. After activating the message glyph with his origin energy, he took out a few pills and spirit stones. Using the pills and spirit stones to recover the soul power and origin energy he'd expended on his journey, he waited for a certain person to arrive. It didn't take long, less than 5 minutes. An ordinary soldier wearing a light gray military uniform and wielding a long spear appeared in front of Yu Haoran like a ghost. Qin 13 greets the Emperor's son-in-law. Facing Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged on the green rock, the ordinary soldier didn't kneel. In fact, there wasn't the slightest hint of respect in his greeting. Yu Haoran didn't care about this at all. This Qin 13 wasn't just an expert at the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm, he was also Emperor Qin's absolute confidant. Not to mention that he was only the Emperor's son-in-law, Qin 13 had the same attitude towards Qin Tianzi. In the entire great Emperor Qin, only Emperor Qin could make them kneel and submit. What's the current situation like? Yu Haoran asked as he closed his eyes again to recover his soul power and origin energy. Very bad. Chapter 833. The Mountain Peak. As Qin 13 gave a detailed account of the northern expedition's encirclement of the Four Symbols sect, Yu Haoran gradually frowned. Emperor Qin's kingdom had dispatched 6 armies in total for this expedition. The armies in the east, west, and south were all led by generals close to the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Saint realm. As for the north, as they got closer to the central region, not only did the spiritual qi of heaven and earth grow denser, but the number of experts increased as well. The sects and clans grew stronger as well. Therefore, 3 armies had been dispatched for the northern expedition: the Central Army, the Left Army, and the Right Army. The Central Army was led by the new marshal of the Li family, Li Changyu, who had just broken through to the pseudo-martial Exalt realm. The Left Army encircling the Four Symbols sect was led by Great General Guyu, the younger brother of the head of the Gu family of Xianying City. Not only was Guyu an experienced general who had been in the army for over 30 years, he had also comprehended the laws of killing and was an expert who could condense half an Azura true body. With Guyu's abilities, it would have been no problem for him to lead an entire army. However, this was not the case. The Left Army had swept through the dozens of clans and sects at the border like a hot knife through butter. This had not only demonstrated the strength of Emperor Qin's kingdom's army, but also caused some of the generals to become blindly confident. Therefore, after failing to take down the 4 divisions' spirit concentrating formation for a long time, their blind confidence caused many of the generals to become more and more irritable. Not only did they often beat the soldiers, several 9th grade martial saints even fought with them in private a few times. This was what Qin 13 had just told him. 13. How did the great general deal with the chaos in the army? Opening his eyes, Yu Haoran asked with a frown. With Emperor Qin's strict military discipline and the elite troops he had trained for hundreds of years, they could have been completely calm after being held back by a mere formation for a dozen days or so. It was impossible for them to become irritable much less to the point where the generals would challenge each other in private. Furthermore, with Guyu's many years of experience in commanding troops, he should be able to discover it in time and think of a way to pacify the spread of these emotions. Why hadn't Qin 13 mentioned anything about Guyu in his narration just now? This was what puzzled Yu Haoran. The general isn't in the camp, Qin 13 replied. Although Qin 13's tone hadn't changed much from before, Yu Haoran could still vaguely sense a hint of sarcasm. Where did Guyu go? Yu Haoran's face darkened as he asked. Meeting Beauty. At the mention of Guyu's whereabouts, Qin 13's expression finally changed. A trace of mockery and disdain appeared on his face. As a great general who has been in the army for more than 30 years, Guyu doesn't know that during the time of war, love is absolutely forbidden. Could it be that he's tired of living? Hearing that the reason Guyu left the army was actually to meet a beauty, Yu Haoran was shocked, and a bad omen rose in his heart. It seemed that ever since the left army arrived at the Four Symbols sect, the entire army had started acting strangely. Who knows? Qin 13 shrugged and responded with an indifferent attitude. 13, who took charge of the left army after Guyu left. Ignoring Qin 13's nonchalance just now, Yu Haoran lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Huang Qingling of the first-rate aristocratic Huang clan. Qin 13 had just given him the name of the person in charge. Then, a mocking sneer appeared on his face. But 3 days ago, General Huang tried to attack the Four Symbols concentration formation and was severely injured by the divine beast White Tiger formed by the formation. He's been unconscious ever since. Qin 13, according to what you said just now, the left army is currently without a leader. What have you done, given your special status? Yu Haoran couldn't help but question Qin 13. Qin 13's overly aloof attitude displeased him greatly. Holy son-in-law, this subordinate is now just a soldier in charge of patrolling. Even if I wanted to do something, I have neither power nor influence, Qin 13 retorted helplessly with a wave of his hands. Phew! Yu Haoran took a deep breath, suppressing the depression he felt from Qin 13's rebuttal just now. Has the situation of the left army been reported to His Majesty? This subordinate used a special method to inform His Majesty as soon as General Guyu left the camp. Qin 13 took out a commander seal that glowed faintly with a 5-clawed golden dragon engraved on the front and a large army character on the back. He handed it to Yu Haoran. His Majesty's decree is for the Holy Son-in-law's army to temporarily take over the left army and lead them to break through the Four Symbols concentration formation and raise the Four Symbols sect to the ground. You may return for now. Yu Haoran took the commander's seal and gestured with a grave expression. This subordinate will take his leave. Qin 13 waved his spear and disappeared from the peak. Your Majesty, you're going back on your word. Yu Haoran grumbled gloomily as he looked in the direction of Xianyang City. Xianyang City, the study of the Imperial Palace. How's the investigation going? Emperor Qin asked a middle-aged man in black robes standing behind a desk as he slowly put down the jade slip in his hand. Your Majesty, we haven't found too many clues for the time being. We only know that the woman who led General Gu away stayed in the Four Symbols sect for a few days, the middle-aged man replied in a slightly hoarse voice. Continue the investigation. I don't believe that General Gu would be so bewitched by a woman that he would forget the laws of the Qin state and his duty as a soldier. Emperor Qin ordered with a gloomy face as he slammed the desk. After nearly 10 days of investigation, they hadn't found any valuable information. If the middle-aged man in black robes wasn't his indispensable right-hand man, he would have beheaded him long ago. Your Majesty, this subordinate intends to go to the Four Symbols sect in person to investigate the woman's origin. The black-clothed middle-aged man could sense the suppressed anger in the Qin Emperor's tone. He also felt a sense of urgency and even had the thought of going there personally. No, you must accompany me in the center of the formation and keep track of the movements of the 6 armies at all times. Emperor Qin shook his head and vetoed the middle-aged man's request without hesitation. But Qin 13, who was in charge of the left army, was already one of his best subordinates. If even Qin 13 couldn't find out the woman's origin, then no matter who he sent to investigate, the result would be the same. Chapter 834. Xianyang City, in the study of the Imperial Palace. The middle-aged man in black took off the bell, held it in his hand, and listened carefully for a while before reporting. Your Majesty, Qin 13 just sent a message saying that the Emperor's son-in-law has arrived at a mountain peak 100 miles away from the left army camp. Qin E. Have Qin 13 give this commander's seal to Yu Haoran immediately. Have him take charge of the left army in place of Gu Yu and be responsible for breaking the Four Symbols concentration formation and wiping out the Four Symbols sect. Understood. After acknowledging the order, he received the commander's seal from the Qin Emperor. The Qin Emperor then placed the commander's seal under the bell. When he picked up the bell again, the commander's seal had disappeared. Your Majesty, about that woman, this subordinate. Recalling that he hadn't finished his request, Qin E was about to continue persuading when Emperor Qin raised his hand and interrupted him. Qin E, with Haoran's strength and methods, he will definitely investigate that woman's origins while wiping out the Four Symbols sect. Therefore, you only need to have 13 cooperate with Haoran. Emperor Qin got up and walked to the window sill of the study. He looked in the direction of the Four Symbols sect and spoke with confidence. This emperor believes that with Haoran's intelligence, he will definitely be able to trace that woman's origins. Fouling, it seems that we'll have to stay in the Four Symbols sect for a while. Yu Haoran said helplessly as he put the commander's seal into his sleeve, feeling extremely depressed. It's fine. There's still nearly a month before that secret realm opens anyway. It's enough time for you to deal with the Four Symbols sect. Being able to take charge of 100,000 elite soldiers was a good way for Yu Haoran to gain experience. Therefore, Fouling hurriedly smiled and comforted the unhappy Yu Haoran. After wiping out the Four Symbols sect, I will definitely loot the entire treasury of the Four Symbols sect and not leave a single 10th grade spirit stone for him. Fouling's consolation eased Yu Haoran's depression a little, but when he thought about how he had been tricked by Emperor Qin, he was unhappy and wanted to take revenge. In response, Fouling only smiled and did not say anything. For Yu Haoran, who was a martial king, it only took him a few minutes to cover the distance of 100 miles. Stop! Just as Yu Haoran landed in front of the temporary military camp, the four martial arts Grandmaster Realm soldiers immediately shouted at him. Not bad. Yu Haoran couldn't help but nod his head in satisfaction when he saw that the four soldiers were in good spirits and vigilance. With his right hand behind his back, the soldier with the highest cultivation took a step forward and asked one of his companions, after which he gestured with his right hand. Who are you? Yu Haoran, the Emperor's son-in-law. Yu Haoran had noticed the small movements of the soldier in front of him, but he did not stop him. Instead, he was very satisfied with the soldier's reaction just now, because from this point, it could be seen how outstanding the quality of the soldiers of the Emperor Qin Kingdom was. Could you be Master Yu Haoran, who was just engaged to Princess Ling Fei? Regardless of whether it was refining the 5 lives mystery pill and the nirvana pill, or the disastrous engagement ceremony, or the 9 shocking betrothal gifts that shocked the guests present, everything that Yu Haoran had done had caused a huge sensation in the Emperor Qin Kingdom. Now, not everyone in the Emperor Qin Kingdom knew about Yu Haoran, but at least there were very few people who did not know about him in the 6 armies that were fighting in all directions. That's me, the Emperor's son-in-law. Nodding with a smile, Yu Haoran took out the token that Steward Jiang had given him after the engagement ceremony and showed it to the soldiers in front of him. This subordinate greets the Emperor's son-in-law. When they saw Yu Haoran take out the token, the 3 soldiers immediately knelt down and saluted him. No need for formalities. All of you may rise. Yu Haoran said gently. Please wait a moment. Emperor's son-in-law. Zhao Si has already gone to invite General Lin. He should be here soon. Seeing that Yu Haoran didn't put on any airs of son-in-law and was very easygoing, the leader of the soldiers said respectfully, It's fine, I'll just wait a moment. Smiling in response, Yu Haoran started chatting with the three soldiers, hoping to glean more information from them. Unfortunately, due to the influence of their status and strength, they didn't know as much as Qin 13. Lin Yuanxiang greets the emperor's son-in-law. May you be well. Just as Yu Haoran was chatting happily with the three soldiers guarding the camp, a general in silver-white armor walked quickly to the front of the camp. No need for formalities, General Lin. Please rise. With Lin Yuanxiang's status, especially now that he was in armor, he only needed to salute with cupped fists. There was no need for him to get down on one knee. But since he did so, it was a show of respect for Qin 13. The situation in the camp wasn't very good and needed someone who could control the situation to solve it. General Lin, why are you the only one who came out to greet me? Did the other generals go to attack the 4 divisions concentration formation? When Lin Yuanxiang got up, Yu Haoran immediately put away his smile and asked with some displeasure. Once he entered the camp and truly understood the situation, he would use the command token to take over the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army. But before that, he needed to know the attitude of the 13 generals in charge of the left army towards his sudden arrival. In the face of Yu Haoran's displeased questioning, Lin Yuanxiang was clearly a little hesitant. After glancing at the 3 soldiers guarding the camp, he softly suggested, "Emperor's son-in-law, let's talk as we walk." Before stepping into the camp, Yu Haoran turned his head and encouraged the 3 soldiers, "Cultivate well. In the future, you will have the chance to become generals in charge of tens of thousands of elite soldiers. We will work hard and live up to your teachings." In the face of Yu Haoran's encouragement, the 3 soldiers were unusually excited and promised, "General Lin, please." Yu Haoran gestured to Lin Yuanxiang and stepped into the camp. But after taking less than 5 steps, he couldn't help but frown. Then, he gestured to Lin Xiangyuan to wait for a while. Then, he left the military palace and sniffed carefully. Then, he stepped into the barracks and sniffed carefully as well. Yu Haoran took a deep breath and said to the pagoda's spirit in his sea of consciousness in a serious tone, "Faling, I'm afraid I already know who the woman who abducted General Guyu is." "Who is it?" Faling immediately asked. "The Green Hill Arctic fox who is proficient in the art of seduction," Yu Haoran said word by word. "Furthermore, I can confirm that this is a 7-tailed Arctic fox who is proficient in the art of seduction." "Yu Haoran, what do you want to do?" After spending almost a year together, Faling knew that since Yu Haoran was so sure, he must have found sufficient evidence to prove that the culprit behind the abnormalities in the left army was the Green Hill Arctic fox who was proficient in the art of seduction. Chapter 835. In the military camp, no matter how high the white fox's grade was or how powerful it was, as long as it had not advanced to the rank 2 Great Emperor realm and become its ancestor's 9-tailed ancestor, the stench on its body would never be removed. As long as he used a special secret technique to increase his sense of smell, he would definitely be able to follow the stench to find the 7-tailed white fox. Using the power of the law of time, it would not be difficult to kill the 7-tailed white fox. However, what Yu Haoran was worried about was whether General Guyu, who had been kidnapped by the 7-tailed white fox, was still alive. If he had already died in the hands of the 7-tailed white fox, then what was the point of him spending so much effort to find the 7-tailed white fox? At most, he would only be able to avenge him. Therefore, after a short moment of consideration, Yu Haoran finally decided to take over the left army first and decide whether to pursue the 7-tailed white fox after the 4-symbol sect was wiped out. "General Lin, I'm very sorry. I suddenly thought of a private matter just now and was a little distracted." Looking at the confused Lin Yuanxiang, Yu Haoran casually found an excuse to cover up his strange behavior just now. Then, as he walked deeper into the military camp, he continued to question the generals as to why they did not come out to greet him. "Prince Consort, speaking of which, I feel very ashamed and have failed to live up to His Majesty's grace." Faced with Yu Haoran's questioning, Lin Yuanxiang first blamed himself and apologized. Then he explained in detail all the strange things that had happened since the left army arrived at the Four Symbols sect. Now that he knew the culprit behind the chaos in the army on the left, Yu Haoran suddenly realized that the timing of the seven-tailed white fox's appearance was not a coincidence. It seemed to be deeply related to the Four Symbols sect. Carefully recalling his understanding of the Four Symbols sect in his previous life, he did not seem to have found any connection between the Four Symbols sect and the Green Hill Fox clan. This was something that he could not figure out. Since he could not figure out, Yu Haoran did not continue to dwell on it. After all, after wiping out the Four Symbols sect and capturing the sect master and elders, he would definitely be able to find out their relationship with the Green Hill Fox clan. Therefore, temporarily suppressing his guesses about the Green Hill Fox clan and the Four Symbols sect, Yu Haoran continued to listen to Lin Yuanxiang's explanation as to why the generals did not come out to greet him. After Lin Yuanxiang's explanation, Yu Haoran White Fox clan masters Yu Huang Yuanxiang's name, Yuanxiang's name, Yuanxiang's name, Yuanxiang's Yuanxiang, Yu angrily. The reason why Lin Yuanxiang did not participate in the competition was firstly because his own strength was slightly weak, and secondly, because he was a commoner, so he did not have the strength nor the qualifications to participate in the competition. Where are they now? Instead of reorganizing the military discipline and thinking about how to break the Four Symbols concentrating formation as soon as possible, they only knew how to fight for power and profit. After hearing what the 11 generals were doing, Yu Haoran's face turned gloomy. Replying to the prince consort, "They are all in the central tent." Hearing the suppressed anger in Yu Haoran's voice, Lin Yuanxiang could not help but secretly rejoice. Due to his background as a commoner, Lin Yuanxiang was not only the one with the lowest status among the 13 generals in the Northern Army, he was also the one who received the worst treatment. The most difficult, tiring, and dangerous missions in the army all belonged to Lin Yuanxiang, but he did not even get a single bite of the plum job of collecting the spoils of war. The unfair treatment over the past few days had caused a fire of anger to burn in his heart, but he had no way of venting it. After all, the 12 generals in the Northern Army were not only powerful, but also had powerful backgrounds. They were not people that Lin Yuanxiang could afford to offend. However, Lin Yuanxiang had learned about the son-in-law before him. He knew that although he was a member of a clan, he had received unfair treatment and was treated worse than a commoner. Moreover, he knew that the son-in-law was someone who did not care about anything and could not take any grievances. Given the haughty natures of the 11 generals, they would definitely not submit to the son-in-law's suppression and would definitely clash in the end. If the son-in-law could take the opportunity to ruthlessly suppress them, he would be able to vent his anger. If he could directly kill 1 or 2 generals, it would be even better. Not only would he be able to vent his anger, it would also be beneficial to his position in the left army. "Bring me there." Yu Haoran took a deep breath and tried his best to show that he was suppressing his anger as he instructed Lin Xianglin. At the same time, he also instructed Thaling to use the possession technique to prevent any unforeseen circumstances. "Son-in-law, follow me." Lin Yuanxiang bowed slightly, and then led Yu Haoran with large strides to the command tent. "Ji Qingyu, when I joined the army, you were still playing with piss and mud. Why do you have to compare seniority with me?" Under Lin Yuanxiang's lead, Yu Haoran quickly arrived at the command tent. Immediately after, rude insults could be heard. "Li Quanqing, what's the point of joining the army earlier? My military exploits are several times more than yours. Of course, my qualifications are higher than yours." Another high-spirited general retorted in an equally boorish manner. "Ji Qingyu, are your bones itching again? Do you want me, Old Li, to help you soothe them?" Ji Qingyu's even more crude retorts made Li Quanqing immediately stand up in anger and challenge him with a sinister smile. "Have they been like this every day recently?" Yu Haoran asked coldly as he pointed at the spacious tent in front of him. Since they were already in front of the command tent, some things could not be said carelessly. Otherwise, it would be easy for some people in the tent to bear grudge. Therefore, Lin Yuanxiang only nodded. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." Jiqing you, based on your triangular cat skills, I, Li Quanqing, will let you have 3 moves first so that others won't say that I'm using my seniority to bully a newcomer. Yu Haoran, who could not bear to listen any longer, directly mobilized the origin energy in his dantian and shouted loudly, "Enough! All of you shut up!" After hearing Yu Haoran shout, the tent suddenly quieted down. However, it was only quiet for less than 3 seconds. Accompanied by a series of curses, a middle-aged general in black armor walked out. Which ignorant fellow dares to make a fuss in front of the command tent? See if I don't. However, when the middle-aged general in black armor saw Yu Haoran's ashen face, he immediately chose to shut up, and at the same time, his face revealed a pleasantly surprised expression as he saluted. Subordinate Li Quanqing greets the prince consort. Prince consort is well. Without waiting for Yu Haoran to signal him to stand up, Li Quanqing took the initiative to stand up and then rushed in front of him in 2 or 3 steps, a fawning expression on his face as he asked, "Prince consort, why are you in the military camp?" You know me. Being able to recognize him at first glance meant that not only did he know him, but he must have seen him before. Chapter 836. In front of the commander's tent. Seeing that Yu Haoran couldn't remember him, Li Quanqing quickly reminded him, "Prince consort, have you forgotten that I was behind the Li family patriarch at the engagement ceremony?" Oh. After hearing Li Quanqing's reminder, Yu Haoran immediately revealed a look of realization. So it's you. In fact, the look of realization just now was just an act. He didn't know who Li Quanqing was at all, because there were hundreds of guests at the engagement ceremony, and there were more than 10 people who were about to reach the martial venerable realm. In addition, there were the family patriarchs of the 4 great families of Xianyang City, the family patriarchs of the 7 great families, and Qin Tianzi, the crown prince. Who would pay attention to a general behind the family patriarch? Nodding, Yu Haoran looked at Li Quanqing as if he knew him. Then, he stepped into the commander's tent. "Greetings, Prince Consort." After Yu Haoran stepped into the commander's tent, the 10 armored generals in the tent immediately saluted him. Yu Haoran glanced at the 10 armored generals one by one. Then, from the way they saluted and the expressions on their faces, he roughly understood everyone's attitude. The result was quite good. Other than Li Quanqing and Lin Yuanxiang, who respected him at the beginning, 6 of the remaining 10 generals knelt on one knee. This attitude showed that subconsciously they still took him, the prince consort, seriously. "Get up, all of you," Yu Haoran said calmly. Then, he continued to walk toward the tiger skin tent that belonged to the great general. Wait. When he was less than 2 meters away from the tiger skin tent, a voice suddenly stopped him from behind. Stopping and turning around, Yu Haoran looked at the person who stopped him. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "Who are you?" "My surname is Han, and my name is Guangbei. I'm from the Han family of Fengyang City." Facing Yu Haoran's interrogation, a middle-aged general in green armor with a dignified appearance introduced himself. "Never heard of you." After Yu Haoran expressed his opinion, he turned around and was about to continue walking towards the tiger marching army. However, Han Guangbei, whose face was slightly red, immediately shouted, "Stop!" Seeing Yu Haoran turn around, Han Guangbei questioned with a slightly gloomy expression, "Prince consort, do you know what this tiger and dragon military couch represents?" "I know." Yu Haoran nodded and said with an indifferent attitude, "It's an exclusive position for the great general of the Northern Brigade. Since Prince Consort Ma knows that the tiger skin military couch represents the position of the great general, then why do you still dare to sit on it? Are you not afraid of violating the military rules?" Han Guangbei asked with a cold smile. Oh. After hearing Han Guangbei's threat, Yu Haoran immediately asked in an expectant tone, "General Han, then I wonder which military rule this prince consort has broken, and what kind of punishment will I receive?" If he wanted to smoothly take over the army on the left, he needed to completely suppress the 12 generals in front of him. If he wanted to completely suppress these generals, he needed to use thunderous methods to suppress the troublemakers who dared to question him. And Han Guangjuan, who had taken the initiative to pick out, was the target he wanted to suppress. He was the chicken that needed to be slaughtered and then shown to the remaining 11 monkeys. Overstepping. The lightest punishment is 50 rods. The heaviest punishment is beheading. Han Guangbei said with a murderous aura, General Han, since this prince consort has violated the most serious military rule, then I wonder if I will be beheaded or punished with rods. Faced with Han Guangbei's murderous threat, Yu Haoran did not care at all. Han Guangbei glanced at the other generals in the tent. When he wanted to join forces with them to put pressure on Yu Haoran, he found that only Ji Qingyu and the other two had attempted expression in their eyes. As for Li Quanqing, Lin Yuanxiang, and the rest of the 8, they either lowered their heads in silence, avoided eye contact, or looked on coldly. They were not willing to put pressure on Han Guangbei at all. A bunch of trash. Seeing that Li Quanqing and the others were unwilling, or rather, did not dare to step forward, Han Guangbei disdainfully mocked them. He then took a deep breath and spoke with a serious expression. Although the prince consort has a noble status, our great Emperor Qin kingdom emphasizes that everyone is equal before the law. If you follow the prince and violate the law, you will be punished the same as a commoner. Thus, since the prince consort has violated the military rule, he should be punished with 50 rods. Hearing that Han Guangbei had the audacity to directly set the punishment that Yu Haoran had to endure, not to mention Li Quanqing and the other generals who had planned to stay out of the matter, even Ji Qingyu and the others who had planned to cooperate with Han Guangbei couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. I accept the punishment of 50 rods. However, to the surprise of the generals present, Yu Haoran did not fly into a rage when faced with Han Guangbei's punishment. Instead, he nodded in agreement. General Han, do you want to enforce the military rule now, or do you want to wait for me to speak before doing so? Yu Haoran asked with a light smile. Prince Consort, as a member of the imperial family, you have the right to request for a sentence reduction from His Majesty. Do you not plan on using it? Han Guangbei, who had also been dazed by Yu Haoran's straightforward acceptance of the punishment, reminded him with a somewhat panicked expression. This was because Yu Haoran's actions that did not follow common sense had completely disrupted his plans, causing him to immediately fall into a dilemma. Of the 12 generals, the reason why Han Guangbei had taken the lead to make trouble for Yu Haoran was mainly because of the prince consort's identity, which posed the greatest threat to him. Ever since great General Gu Yu went missing, and the one with the greatest prestige and strength, Huang Qingling, fell into a coma, Han Guangbei became the one with the highest cultivation, the strongest strength, and the greatest prestige among the 12 generals of the left army. If it weren't for the fact that the power behind him was inferior to Li Quanqing and Ji Qingyu, he would have already smoothly replaced Huang Qingling and become the true controller of the Northern Army. If he could successfully break through the Four Symbols concentration formation and flatten the Four Symbols sect, then he could possibly rise to the heavens in a single step and directly be promoted to the position of Great General of the Northern Army. He had secretly instigated the conflict between Li Quanqing and Ji Qingyu in the hopes of exhausting the power behind the two through internal strife, so that he could smoothly ascend to the position at the most crucial moment. However, Yu Haoran's sudden arrival had caused a deviation in his carefully planned scheme. After all, Yu Haoran was the son-in-law that the Qin Emperor valued the most. He also had the ability to be a Pil Dao and a Ray Dao Grandmaster. Not only did Yu Haoran have a higher reputation than him, but the power behind him was also stronger. Therefore, he wanted to use the military rule to show Yu Haoran his power and let him know that the identity of the prince consort was not useful in the Northern Army. Chapter 837. Inside the command tent. Just as General Han said, the Emperor Qin kingdom emphasizes that everyone is equal before the law. If you follow the prince and break the law, you will be punished the same as a commoner. Yu Haoran shook his head in response to Han Guangbei's panicked reminder. Then, he solemnly refused. I don't need to ask the Emperor, and I am willing to accept the punishment. So, General Han, please send someone to carry it out. Prince Consort, have you really thought it through? Han Guangbei did not give up and continued to ask. General Han, there is no need to say more. I have already made my decision. Yu Haoran nodded his head as if he was not afraid of death. Okay then. Seeing that Yu Haoran was unwilling to accept the punishment no matter what, Han Guangbei immediately hardened his heart and raised his head to shout outside the tent. Men, two soldiers wearing green armor and holding green tasseled swords entered the tent upon receiving the order. Han Guangbei raised his chin at Yu Haoran and ordered with an expression of pity. Prince Consort has violated the military rules and will be punished with 50 strokes. Now, take Prince Consort to carry out the punishment. Yes, sir. After receiving Han Guangbei's order, two soldiers with swords in their hands walked towards Yu Haoran. Wait. However, when the two soldiers were less than 2 meters away from him, Yu Haoran suddenly stopped them. After hearing Yu Haoran's voice, Han Guangbei was overjoyed and hurriedly asked, Prince Consort, could it be that you have changed your mind and plan to use your status as a member of the imperial family to ask the emperor? I still have one thing that I do not understand. I hope General Han can help me clear up my confusion. He shook his head and indicated that he did not plan to use his status as the Prince Consort. Instead, he asked with a puzzled expression, Prince Consort, please speak. Han Guangbei said, General Han, this Prince Consort needs to endure 50 strikes of the military rod because I have violated the military rules, right? That's right. Han Guangbei nodded his head and confirmed. Yu Haoran turned around and pointed at the tiger skin that belonged to the general and continued to ask. The reason for the violation of the military rules is because I sat on the tiger skin that originally belonged to the general without permission, right? That's right. While nodding his head, Han Guangbei was also completely confused by Yu Haoran's question. However, a general in light blue armor had a look of sudden realization on his face. Then, he looked at Han Guangbei with a trace of pity and a cold smile. General Han, then this Prince Consort wants to ask you, did I sit on the tiger-skin dragon bed? After receiving Han Guangbei's confirmation, Yu Haoran's expression instantly changed as he asked. This. Facing Yu Haoran's gloomy question, Han Guangbei didn't know how to answer. At the same time, he also gradually understood why Yu Haoran was willing to accept the punishment of 50 strokes. Originally, he had been setting a trap for him and waiting for him to jump into it. General Han, answer me. Abruptly taking a step forward, Yu Haoran asked in a loud voice, without showing any anger. No. Han Guangbei, who was completely flustered, replied subconsciously. Since I didn't sit on the tiger skin, then I didn't violate the military rules. Taking another step forward, Yu Haoran continued to ask with an oppressive tone. Since I didn't violate the military rules, then what right do you have to enforce the military rules on a prince who is loyal to the empire? Prince Consort, it was my fault just now. I'm willing to accept the punishment. Facing Yu Haoran's constant pressure, Han Guangbei took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the panic in his heart. He planned to take a step back temporarily and then look for another opportunity. Generally, according to the laws of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, if a subordinate offends a superior and abuses power for personal gain, how should he be punished? Seeing that Han Guangbei took the initiative to admit his guilt, Yu Haoran smiled slightly and then turned to ask Li Quanqing. However, when he looked at Li Quanqing, he didn't hide the coldness in his eyes. Replying to Prince Consort, according to the laws of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, if a subordinate offends a superior, he should be beheaded. If he abuses power for personal gain, he should be hanged. Seeing the coldness in Yu Haoran's eyes, Li Quanqing, who seemed rude but was actually quite shrewd, immediately knew what he was thinking and quickly told him the most severe punishment. Li Quanqing, what do you mean? After hearing the punishment given by Li Quanqing, Han Guangbei's face changed, and he immediately asked with red eyes. Whether it was offending a superior or abusing power for personal gain, there were big and small crimes. For example, if it was a serious crime, he would be beheaded. If it was a light crime, he would only have to suffer 50 strokes. And just like how he had offended Yu Haoran, at most, he would have his salary deducted for half a year to a year. But according to the punishment given by Li Quanqing, he would undoubtedly die today. Shrugging, Li Quanqing put on an innocent expression and said, "General Han, I don't mean anything. I'm just reading out the laws of the Emperor Qin Kingdom." General Han, this prince consort was willing to accept the punishment when faced with the crime of abusing power for personal gain. What will you do when faced with the crime of offending a superior and abusing power for personal gain? Waving his hand, Yu Haoran indicated for Li Quanqing to stop talking. He turned to look at Han Guangbei, and, as he questioned him, he secretly used the power of the laws of time as a mark. "Prince Consort, can't you be merciful and let me, Han Guangbei, live?" Han Guangbei, who was also secretly using the power of the laws, asked in a cold voice. "Yeah." In the face of Han Guangbei's questioning, Yu Haoran couldn't help but sigh, his voice filled with helplessness. General Han has fought for the kingdom for many years and has made many contributions. His Majesty holds you in high regard. Therefore, not only do I not want to, but I'm afraid that many generals present also don't want you to be punished. Then, Yu Haoran changed the tone of his voice and said firmly, "But the law is ruthless. I'm sorry, General Han." "Huh?" In the face of Yu Haoran's hypocritical sigh, Han Guangbei couldn't help but laugh to the sky. After laughing for nearly a minute, he suddenly stopped laughing and said with a slightly disdainful expression, "Yu Haoran, you can punish me if you want, but I don't know who has the right and ability to do so." "Han Guangbei, what do you mean?" Yu Haoran's expression changed slightly. As he questioned loudly, he began to use the power of the laws of time as a mark. "Yu Haoran, you're really vicious." Releasing the momentum that he had been suppressing, Han Guangbei looked at the slightly nervous Yu Haoran and said with gritted teeth, "For the crime of abusing power, I'll only let you suffer 50 strokes of the rod at most. But what about you? You want to use this trivial crime to kill me, Han Guangbei?" Chapter 838. In the command tent, Yu Haoran raised his arm and spoke disdainfully as he looked at Han Guangbei, who had shed all pretense of cordiality and intended to kill him. "Han Guangbei, Yu Haoran, know what you're really thinking. But you're not only lacking in courage and strategy, but you're also short-sighted. If the Northern Army is handed over to you, I'm afraid the 100,000 elite soldiers will be wiped out in less than 3 days." Han Guangbei, who had originally intended to make a move, asked Yu Haoran in disdain after hearing his scornful evaluation. How am I, Han Guangbei, lacking in courage and strategy? How am I short-sighted?" "Han Guangbei, since you want to replace the great general and General Huang to control the Northern Army, you should stand out boldly and accept the challenges and doubts of all the soldiers to show your courage and dominance." "But how did you do it?" "You hid behind the scenes to sow discord and reap the benefits. But in the end, you lost the courage that a soldier should have. Isn't this the expression of someone lacking in courage?" In the face of Yu Haoran's accusation, Han Guangbei wanted to open his mouth to refute, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. That's right. With his qualifications, prestige, and strength, as long as he stood out bravely and accepted the challenges of all the soldiers, even Li Quanqing and Ji Qingyu would have to be careful. After all, in the face of all the soldiers, although one's family background was important, it was more important to gain the support of all the soldiers. "Han Guangbei, I was close to the tiger skin parade and was willing to accept 50 strokes of the rod as punishment. It was such an obvious trap, but not only did you not see it, you even jumped into it. Do you dare to say that you have a plan?" Han Guangbei knew that he had nothing to say to the accusation of not having a plan. After all, as Yu Haoran had said, in the face of such an obvious plot, as long as one was not crazy, they would definitely be able to see that it was a trap deliberately set up. But what about himself? "Han Guangbei, if anyone knows a little about me, Yu Haoran, they would know not to attack me so easily. That's because they all know that I possess a secret technique that can easily kill quasi-martial exalted experts. And you, am I wrong to say that you are short-sighted? Prince Consort, this subordinate is willing to accept the punishment." Yu Haoran's final reminder reminded Han Guangbei of his engagement ceremony with Princess Ling Fei. He had killed two patriarchs of the Wang family and forced Qin Baijun, the head of the imperial clan court, to abandon everything and flee the Emperor Qin kingdom. Even the Wang family's ancestor and Qin Bojun, who were pseudo-martial exalts, were no match for a single finger of Yu Haoran's, let alone him, a mere peak ninth-grade martial saint. Furthermore, when he saw Yu Haoran raise his arm and point his finger at him, he knew that the other party was ready to use the secret technique to kill a quasi-martial honorable. If it weren't for his disdainful humiliation and his unconvinced questioning, he would have already been dismembered into countless pieces of meat. Then everything he had done in his life would have been revealed to everyone without holding anything back. When he thought of this, the fear in his heart caused him to disperse the power of laws he had just activated. Then, he assumed a posture of accepting the punishment. Seeing Han Guangbei admit defeat and realize his mistake, and seeing the fear in the eyes of Ji Qingyu and the others, Yu Haoran suddenly changed his mind. Yu Haoran slowly lowered his raised arm and signaled the tower spirit to disperse the possession mystic technique. He sighed softly, then reached out and patted Han Guangbei's shoulder. "General Han, just as this prince consort said, as long as you have not betrayed the great Qin, no one would be willing to kill a general like you who has made great contributions and is loyal to the empire. Now, since you have realized your mistake and are willing to accept the punishment, you can be spared the death penalty." When Yu Haoran suddenly spared the death penalty, Han Guangbei, who had closed his eyes and was waiting for death, felt as if he had seen light in the darkness, as if he had seen sweetness in the desert. He was so excited that his body trembled. Following this, he directly knelt down on both knees and spoke with a somewhat choked voice. "This subordinate thanks the prince consort for sparing my life. This subordinate thanks the prince consort for sparing my life. Han Guangbei, don't be in such a hurry to thank me. I haven't finished speaking yet." Yu Haoran raised his hand and indicated for Han Guangbei not to be in such a hurry to kneel down and thank him. "Although you can be spared the death penalty, you cannot escape punishment. Prince Consort, as long as I don't die, this subordinate is willing to accept any punishment," Han Guangyu said as he stood up and patted his chest. In response, Yu Haoran was not in a hurry to express his stance. Instead, he turned and walked towards the tiger skin that represented the great general's position. Under the gazes of Ji Qingyu and the others, who were slightly tempted but quickly extinguished the thought, Li Quanqing and Lin Yuanxiang chose to ignore him as Yu Haoran sat cross-legged on the military couch. He then looked up at the 12 generals in the tent and beckoned to Lin Yuanxiang. "The prince consort's army." Lin Yuanxiang quickened his steps and walked up to Yu Haoran, clearly a little nervous. "Look at what this is," Yu Haoran asked with a smile as he took out the commander seal that Qin 13 had given him from his sleeve. "This is the imperial seal that can control all of the empire's armies." Lin Yuanxiang accepted the seal from Yu Haoran. As a general, he didn't need to examine it closely. As a general, he knew that not only was it real, but it was also of the highest rank, the imperial seal that could control millions of soldiers in the empire. "Subordinate Lin Yuanxiang greets your majesty. May your majesty live for 10,000 years. Holding the seal high with both hands, Lin Yuanxiang hurriedly fell to his knees and shouted, "Long live the emperor." When Li Quanqing, Ji Qingyu, and the others saw the seal held high by Lin Yuanxiang's hand, they too fell to their knees and shouted, "Long live the emperor." Han Guangbei, who'd been kneeling all this time, smiled wryly and rejoiced. Because he had the imperial seal of the highest rank, Yu Haoran could even tear down the tent that symbolized the center of the army, let alone sit on the tiger skin. As generals, they wouldn't dare raise any objections even if he wanted to. Rejoiced because he'd chosen to admit his guilt and accept his punishment willingly. Otherwise, Yu Haoran wouldn't even need to deliberately instruct him to do so. All of his direct subordinates and family members left behind in Xianyang City would have been implicated as well. "Rise, all of you." Yu Haoran took back the seal from Lin Yuanxiang's hand and gestured indifferently. "Han Guangbei, this prince consort will now remove you from the position of general. Are you willing? When he saw that Han Guangbei didn't rise as Li Quanqing and the others had done, Yu Haoran nodded inwardly and announced the punishment. This subordinate is willing. Chapter 839. Inside the command tent. Han Guangbei, this prince consort will now promote you to the captain of the guards. You will be responsible for protecting this prince consort's safety. Are you willing? Seeing that he had been stripped of his position as a general, not only did Han Guangbei not have a trace of resentment, but he was also very grateful. This made Yu Haoran admire his own intelligence and wisdom. This subordinate swears to protect the prince consort's safety. He had just been stripped of his position and then promoted to captain of the guards. Although this captain might be a general without an army, the promotion of his position and the opportunity to become Yu Haoran's confidant was probably more promising than being a general. Therefore, in the face of such an opportunity, how could Han Guangbei not be willing? How could he not be grateful? How could he not quickly express his loyalty? If anyone wants to harm the prince consort, they will have to step over my dead body first. Han Guangbei looked at Ji Qingyu and the others one by one as he threatened with a murderous aura. Captain Han, stand behind me first. Although Han Guangbei deliberately provoked and threatened Ji Qingyu and the others, which was not conducive to the unity of the generals present, it could increase his prestige. Yu Haoran was very satisfied with this. General Lan Rong, when Han Guangbei obediently stood behind him and loyally carried out his duties as captain of the guards, Yu Haoran raised his head and asked the middle-aged man in light blue armor. Subordinate Lan Rong greets the prince consort. Seeing that Yu Haoran suddenly paid attention to him, Lan Rong couldn't help but feel nervous while greeting him. General Lan, there is no need to be nervous. Yu Haoran knew why Lan Rong was nervous. He smiled and comforted him while taking out a token from his storage ring. He tossed it to Lan Rong while explaining. 2 days ago, when this prince consort passed by Weishan City, I stopped at the city lord's mansion for a while. When he found out that this prince consort was going to the army in the north, City Lord Lan specifically asked this prince consort to send his regards. When he received the token from Yu Haoran, Lan Rong had already guessed that Yu Haoran and Lan Weisheng had a good relationship. Now, after hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Lan Rong, who was relieved of a heavy burden, asked somewhat excitedly, Prince Consort, how is the city lord doing? General Lan, please don't worry. When this prince consort stayed in Profound Mountain City, not only did I get along well with City Lord Lan, we even worked together to kill the 2 biggest tumors in Profound Mountain City. Now, Weishan City is flourishing, and the people are living and working in peace. Yu Haoran knew what Lan Rong was really concerned about, so he didn't hide anything. At the same time, it was also to intimidate Ji Qingyu and the others. After all, the Invigilator, who was in charge of military affairs, had astonishing power. Even the city lord and the princess did not dare to easily offend the Invigilator, let alone directly kill them. Could it be? The 2 tumors that had been restricting the city lord of Profound Mountain City were the evil dragon gang, which countless people in Profound Mountain City hated. The other was the Invigilator, Tu Xing, who could take away the city lord's authority at any time. Therefore, when he heard that Yu Haoran had killed the 2 tumors, Lei Xingjuan and Tu Xing immediately flashed through Lan Rong's mind. That's right. It was the evil dragon gang's leader, Lei Xingjuan, and the Invigilator, Tu Xing. On behalf of the city lord and the 3 million people of Profound Mountain City, Lan Rong thanks the prince consort for your kindness. Although Yu Haoran had said that he had worked together with the city lord, Lan Rong, who knew Lan Weisheng very well, knew that it was most likely Yu Haoran who had killed Lei Xingjuan and Tu Xing alone. How could Lan Rong, who had always wanted to change the situation in Profound Mountain City, not be moved? General Lan, there's no need to be so polite. After gesturing to Lan Rong, Yu Haoran's gaze swept across the 11 generals present. When he saw the ecstasy in the eyes of Lin Yuanxiang, Li Quanqing, Lan Rong, and the generals from the 2 second-rate families in Xianyang City, as well as the evasive and fearful look in the eyes of Ji Qingyu and the others, he knew that he had basically succeeded in taking over the army on the left. Next, he had to consider how to break the four symbols concentration array and directly wipe out the four symbols sect. He was already fully prepared for this. General Lan Rong, General Li Quanqing, General Lin Yuanxiang, General Li Quanqing, General Lin Yuanxiang, General Lai Hai, and General Qi Weixian will stay behind. The remaining 6 generals will return to their camps for the time being. With Han Guangbei's introduction behind him, Yu Haoran learned about the origins of the 2 generals who had ecstasy in their eyes. He then pointed out the generals who trusted him one by one and gestured for them to stay behind. As for Ji Qingyu and the others, who had dissatisfaction in their eyes when they left the tent, Yu Haoran directly chose to ignore them. This was because the 5 generals he had left behind, including Han Guangbei, would be his assistants to help him break the 4 symbols concentration array in the future. Not only did he need them to do their best, but he also needed them to be loyal and carry out his intentions. 5 generals, the reason why I asked you to stay behind is mainly because, after that, Yu Haoran explained in detail how to break the 4 symbols concentration array to Lan Rong and the others. 3 days later, Yu Haoran, who was wearing a blue robe and looking very elegant, stood on a temporary high platform in the open space that was usually used for training. With his hands behind his back, he glanced back and forth at the 100,000 elite soldiers below him. His expression was as calm as still water. He had been shooting for almost an hour. It was not until some of the generals standing in front of the 100,000 elite soldiers began to show a trace of impatience that Yu Haoran finally opened his mouth to speak. He used his elemental energy to cover his voice so that the 100,000 elite soldiers could hear him. Some of you know me, and some of you don't. However, regardless of whether you know me or not, I would like to introduce myself first. My surname is Yu, and my name is Haoran. I have many identities. For example, I am the deputy leader of the second-rate sect, the 100 Qi Gate. I am the Emperor's most valued son-in-law. I am a genius who has the potential to be a top genius. I am a grandmaster who has reached the peak of alchemy and formation. At this point, Yu Haoran stopped joking and his expression turned serious instantly. He used his elemental energy to raise his voice as he shouted. But now, I, Yu Haoran, only have one identity, and that is the general of your left army. I will be your benefactor who will lead you to break the 4 symbols concentration array and destroy the 4 symbols sect. After stopping his shouting, Yu Haoran looked at the 100,000 elite soldiers below the high platform with a look of anticipation in his eyes. General is mighty. General is mighty. General is mighty. As a commoner, Lin Yuanxiang was the best at reading people's expressions. He did not need to think too much to know what Yu Haoran was thinking when he looked at Lin Yuanxiang with anticipation. Therefore, he took the lead in shouting. General is mighty. General is mighty. General is mighty. Lin Yuanxiang led the shouting, and the elite soldiers under his command also cheered loudly. Chapter 840. In the military camp, on the high platform, Yu Haoran was very disappointed when he heard the cheers of the 100,000 elite soldiers below the high platform. There was not a trace of passion in them. Originally, he thought that he would be able to gain the recognition and trust of the 100,000 elite soldiers with his seemingly humble but actually brilliant speech. From there, he would be able to increase the morale of the entire army. But from the looks of it now, dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. He did not have the aura of a king that the main characters in the stories told by his elders when he was young had. He also did not have the charisma of a tiger that could make all living things kneel down and worship him. Luckily, he had expected this to happen. The disappointment in his heart only lasted for a few seconds before Yu Haoran returned to normal. Yu Haoran raised his hands and signaled for the crowd to quiet down. He then continued, "Some of you should have heard of my deeds, Yu Haoran. You should know that I am a person who does not have any scruples and does not like to follow morals. So, I don't want to say any more nonsense that should encourage you to kill your enemies bravely and serve your country. Yu Haoran's casual chatter attracted the interest of some of the soldiers who originally didn't agree with him. Their attention also became much more focused. Next, I will simply talk about the battle plan. Seeing that he had successfully attracted the interest of many soldiers, Yu Haoran was not too happy and continued to chat. Just now, this prince consort has already said that among my many identities, there is the identity of a formation master at the peak. Although the Four Symbols sect protective formation, the Four Symbols formation is very powerful. It is easy for me to break it. Even General Gu Yu, who was close to becoming a martial honorable, could not do anything about the Four Symbols formation. Furthermore, General Huang Zhongling, who was the most powerful, was defeated by the Four Symbols formation. As a result, he was unconscious and could not take charge of the situation. Therefore, the crowd did not believe Yu Haoran's confidence in breaking the Four Symbols formation. Some of the people who did not like his attitude even had mocking expressions on their faces. Of course, before I really break the Four Symbols formation, I know that you must think that I was bragging. How could the change in the crowd's gaze and aura be hidden from Yu Haoran? He did not care about the crowd's disbelief and continued to chat casually. It's fine, because I do not expect you to believe me, nor do I need your help to break the formation. There's only one thing that you need to do now, and that is to stand in front of the formation obediently and watch how I and the 5 generals break the Four Symbols formation easily. All right, that's all for now. As for the rest, wait until we break through the Four Symbols concentration formation, then we'll talk about it, depending on my mood. Yu Haoran did not receive the support of 100,000 elite soldiers and generals that he had imagined at the beginning, and they did not follow him to their deaths. He had originally prepared to liven up the atmosphere of the scene, but he instantly lost the desire to continue speaking. His only thought right now was to take Han Guangbei and the others and break through the Four Symbols formation as quickly as possible. He wanted to use the most shocking scene to give these idiots, who could not tell the difference between Wei and Wei, a heavy slap to the face. Let's go. Yu Haoran waved his hand and gave a very casual order. He took to the air and made his way to the Four Symbols sect, which was 100 kilometers away from the camp. Emperor's son-in-law, there is no need to be angry. The reason why the soldiers are not very enthusiastic is mainly because they have never seen your true abilities. As the captain of the guards, Han Guangbei hurried to Yu Haoran's side and carefully explained when he saw how dispirited Yu Haoran was. After you break the Four Symbols concentrating formation with a thunderous method, the 100,000 elite soldiers will definitely be convinced and follow you to the end of their lives. Guangbei, there's no need for you to explain. I know what I'm doing, and I won't blame the soldiers. After casually replying to Han Guangbei's explanation, Yu Haoran suddenly sped up and made his way to the Four Symbols sect that had already appeared in his vision. Sigh. Han Guangbei could not help but sigh as he watched Yu Haoran speed up to the Four Symbols sect. Afterwards, he glanced at the army behind him and at Ji Qingyu and the others who were leading the army forward. A cold light flashed through his eyes. At such a young age, Yu Haoran was able to achieve astonishing achievements in the martial Dao, alchemy Dao, and array Dao, and his style of doing things as he pleased. Yu Haoran's various stunning performances were the idols of those soldiers who did not have high cultivations but desired to change their fates through their own efforts. They should erupt with great enthusiasm in the face of their idol's encouragement. The reason why they treated Yu Haoran so coldly must have had something to do with Ji Qingyu and the others secretly sowing discord. If it were not for the fact that this was the crucial moment to break through the Four Symbols formation and wipe out the Four Symbols sect, he would definitely teach Ji Qingyu and the others a lesson and let them know that there were some people they could not afford to offend. Yu Haoran's eyes were filled with intense hatred as he looked at the Four Symbols sect that had not changed much from his memories. In his previous life, when he had first escaped from the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, he had coincidentally encountered 2 peak 9th grade martial royal experts who had perished together. He had accidentally obtained 2 storage rings that they had left behind on their corpses. However, he had been unlucky enough to be discovered by the experts of the Four Symbols sect, as soon as he had picked up the 2 storage rings. At that time, his cultivation had only been at the peak of 3rd grade martial grandmaster. He was no match for the experts of the 4 Symbols sect. Therefore, in order to save his life, he had voluntarily handed over the 2 storage rings without waiting for the experts of the 4 Symbols sect to ask for them. However, he had never imagined that the experts of the 4 Symbols sect who had obtained the storage rings would not let him go. Instead, they had captured him and brought him to the 4 Symbols sect. It was also because he had been captured and brought to the 4 Symbols sect that he had learned about the treasure that the 4 Symbols sect possessed after 20 days of inhumane torture. Prince Consort, General Lan, and the others are ready. Han Guangbei, who had rushed over, interrupted Yu Haoran's recollection. He also turned his attention back to the 4 Symbols formation that was gradually being activated. Let's go. After reminding Han Guangbei, Yu Haoran sped up and flew to the front of the 4 Symbols formation. As he watched the 4 Symbols sect gradually being enveloped by green, red, white, and gray energy, Yu Haoran secretly swallowed the blue water dragon's blood essence and looked for an opportunity to merge with the formation. General Han, as the saying goes, don't do things more than 3 times. Just as Yu Haoran was looking for an opportunity to merge with the formation, the sect leader of the 4 Symbols sect's furious voice sounded from within the formation. The first time you attacked the 4 Symbols formation, we only chased General Guyu out of the formation. We did not hurt him at all. The second time you attacked the 4 Symbols formation, we only injured General Huang. We did not take his life. Chapter 841. In front of the 4 Symbols sect. Just as the sect master of the 4 Symbols sect made a blatant threat, Yu Haoran, who was searching for an opportunity to enter the formation with his second clone, could not help but laugh out loud, as if he had heard an extremely amusing joke. Kid, who are you? Why did you suddenly laugh earlier? Amidst the somber atmosphere, the laughter was extraordinarily ear-piercing. The sect master of the 4 Symbols sect could not help but call out furiously. How dare you, Hong Shitian? Do you know this person? Hearing how the sect master of the 4 Symbols sect actually dared to refer to the son-in-law as a brat, the captain of the guards, Han Guangbei, immediately scolded sternly. When he was about to formally introduce the sect master of the 4 Symbols sect, Yu Haoran raised his hand to stop him. Afterwards, he raised his head and looked at the 4 Symbols condensing formation before him as he spoke extremely modestly. Sect Master Hong, I'm just a nobody. Even if I tell you my name, you probably wouldn't know me. As for why you asked me why I laughed earlier, it's because your threat to General Han was far too amusing. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Kid, I was only speaking the truth earlier. What's so amusing about it? Yu Haoran seemed to be modest, but his sarcastic explanation caused Hong Shitian, who was inside the array formation, to gnash his teeth in hatred. However, Han Guangbei's actions earlier indicated that the young man before him had an extraordinary background. As a result, before he truly understood the origins of the young man in front of the formation and why he felt amused, he could only forcefully suppress his killing intent and ask, Sect Master Hong, I know a little about formations, and I've heard of the 4 Symbols condensing formation before. As he explained why he felt amused earlier, Yu Haoran indicated for his second clone to search for an opportunity to enter the 4 Symbols condensing formation as soon as possible. As for Thaling, he directly returned to the victor to rest. This was because, according to him, deciphering the 4 Symbols condensing formation before him would increase the cultivation of his second clone by an unimaginable amount. Furthermore, Han Guangbei, Lan Rong, and the others could easily deal with the few martial saints in the 4 Symbols sect that could threaten him, so he did not need to prepare to help at any time. It was precisely because he wanted to give his second clone a chance to understand and decipher the 4 Symbols condensing formation that he stopped Han Guangbei from formally introducing it and wasted time explaining it to Hong Shitian. The Symbols sect's protective formation contains a trace of the ancient 4 Symbols condensing formation's essence. It can unleash 1% of the formation's power. 1% of the 4 divisions' divine concentration formation's power is enough to trap a quasi-martial supremacy who has passed 1 tribulation. It can also kill a quasi-martial supremacy who has perfected the laws but has not passed the tribulation. Young man, it seems like you know a lot about the 4 symbols concentration formation. Yu Haoran's praise of the 4 divisions spirit-focusing formation made Hong Shitian, who was originally filled with murderous intent, feel happy, and his attitude towards Yu Haoran became much gentler. Of course, Yu Haoran replied humbly and continued. However, through the activation of the 4 symbols condensing formation just now and the fluctuation of the divine beast's aura in the formation, I realized that the protective formation of the 4 symbols sect is not as powerful as the one I heard from afar. I believe that sect leader Hong can trap General Han and the others, but I'm afraid you don't have the strength to kill them yet. This is also the reason why I felt so happy just now. Is that so? As Yu Haoran further explained and mocked him, the good impression Hong Shitian had of him disappeared in an instant. Moreover, the murderous intent in his heart grew stronger. In that case, why don't you enter the formation right now and see if the power of our 4 symbols sect's protective formation has weakened? Sure. Faced with Hong Shitian's provocation, Yu Haoran unexpectedly nodded his head in agreement. Following that, based on the observation and research of his second clone, he quickly entered the formation and returned to his original position in an instant. Furthermore, a wisp of green energy appeared in his hand. Sect leader Hong, after my experiment just now, the current 4 symbols condensing formation's power is probably only 1,000th of the ancient formation's power. Yu Haoran waved the green energy in his hand at Hong Shitian, who was in the formation, with a smug look on his face. That's not right. However, the smug look only lasted for 3 seconds before it was replaced by a frown. It's only 1,000th of the formation's power. With General Huang's strength, even if he couldn't break through the 4 symbols concentration formation, it shouldn't be a problem for him to leave the formation unscathed. Why would he be so heavily injured? At this point, Yu Haoran raised his head and looked at the green, white, red, and gray energies that were constantly changing within the array formation. He continued to mutter to himself. Under normal circumstances, to unleash the power of the 4 symbols condensing formation, not only does it require a large amount of blood essence from exotic beasts with the bloodline of ancient divine beasts, but also requires the powerhouse controlling the formation to have a very high cultivation. The higher the concentration of blood essence from the 4 divine beasts, the higher the cultivation of the powerhouse controlling the formation, and the stronger the 4 symbols condensing formation will be. Yu Haoran had an idea when he reached this point. He immediately turned his head and shouted at Han Guangbei, Lan Rong, and the others. Generals, there's a problem with the formation core that can occupy the Blue Dragon's position in the east. It's responsible for mobilizing the entire formation's attack and defense. Immediately use all your strength to attack the formation. At the same time, he immediately mobilized the blue serpent's blood essence that he had just swallowed and quickly fused it into the 4 symbols condensing formation with the help of his second clone. Hearing Yu Haoran pointing out the flaw in the 4 symbols condensing formation, Hong Shitian's expression changed. Just like what Yu Haoran said, as a sect protecting formation that had a trace of the ancient 4 symbols condensing formation's essence, not only did it require a large amount of blood essence from the 4 divine beasts, but it also required a powerhouse with a high cultivation to control the formation. The first 2 times they were able to force Great General Gu Yu to retreat and severely injure Huang Qingling was because the person who condensed the blue dragon with the help of the formation was the Great Elder, who had the highest cultivation and the strongest strength in the 4 symbols sect and was proficient in formations. Originally, they thought that after the failure of the second attack, especially with Gu Yu's disappearance and Huang Zongling's coma, the Emperor Qin's left army would lay low for a long time. Therefore, the Great Elder secretly left the sect and went to the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion to exchange for more blood essence from exotic beasts that contained the bloodline of the 4 divine beasts. Boom! Han Guangbei, Lan Rong, and the others used all their strength to attack, while instantly weakening the formation by several times. It also woke Hong Shirtian up instantly. Feeling that the formation was damaged after being attacked by 6 ninth grade martial saints with all their strength, he immediately ordered with a hoarse voice. Chapter 842. In the Four Symbols Spirit Concentrating Formation. After hearing Hong Shirtian's order and warning, the two vice sect leaders in charge of the Vermilion Bird and the White Tiger and the second elder in charge of the Black Tortoise's defense immediately clenched their teeth and exhausted a third of their souls. Using the enormous power gained from exhausting their souls, the defensive power of the formation instantly increased by several times and successfully blocked the fierce attacks of Han Guangbei and Lan Rong. However, passively defending was not the solution, nor was it a long-term solution. Therefore, after using the enormous power gained from exhausting their souls to strengthen the defense of the Four Symbols Spirit Concentrating Formation, Hong Shirtian shouted to the south, north, and west respectively. Vice Sect Leader Qian, Vice Sect Leader Xia, Second Elder, with the power gained from exhausting our souls, we will immediately perform the Divine Beast Condensation Technique. Today, no matter what, we must leave behind 1 or 2 corpses of 9th grade martial saints. We must let the Emperor Qin know the power of the Four Symbols Spirit Concentrating Formation and the power of our Four Symbols Spirit Concentrating Formation. We must make them give up on attacking us, and let our Four Symbols sect continue to exist for millions of years. Sect Leader, let's begin. Vice Sect Leader Qian, who came from the White Tiger's position in the west, lowered his head and exuded a strong, murderous aura. Nodding to Vice Sect Leader Qian, Hong Shirtian immediately formed a seal with his 10 fingers and shouted with a dignified expression. Using the power of blood essence, gather the power of the formation, condense the body of the divine beast. Then he pointed to the Black Tortoise's direction in the north. Profound change. A square gray mark instantly merged into the second elder's body in the north of the formation. As the gray mark merged into the second elder's body, countless gray energy in the formation gathered around the second elder and quickly enveloped him. In less than 3 seconds, accompanied by a deep roar and a rumbling sound, a giant black tortoise as big as a mountain slowly walked out of the dense gray energy. The giant black tortoise roared at Hong Shirtian. After receiving a nod from Hong Shirtian, it quickly merged into the formation under its feet. And just as the giant black tortoise merged into the formation under his feet, Hong Shirtian pointed to the Vermilion Bird's position in the south. Fire change. A squarish red imprint instantly fused into Vice Sect Master Xia's body, which was located at the Vermilion Bird's position in the south of the formation. Clang. Similarly, it took less than 3 seconds. A gigantic vermilion bird that was over 20 meters long and over 100 meters tall emerged from the dense red energy amid a high-pitched cry. The giant vermilion bird flapped its fiery red wings and nodded at Hong Shirtian. Then it soared into the sky and quickly merged into the array above its head. Just as the giant vermilion bird merged into the formation above his head, Hong Shirtian continued to form seals and pointed at the White Tiger in the west. Killing transformation. A squarish white mark instantly merged into Vice Sect Leader Qian's body, which was located at the western White Tiger's position. Roar. It still took less than 3 seconds. Accompanied by a roar filled with killing intent, a handsome white tiger that was over 40 meters tall and over 100 meters in size charged out of the dense white energy. Awoo! The white tiger roared at Han Guangbei and the others who were fiercely attacking the array. It rushed to the edge of the array and began to actively resist the power of the array. Green transformation. Just as the white tiger, which was emitting a strong, murderous aura, was desperately resisting the fierce attacks of Han Guangbei and the others, Hong Shirtian took a deep breath. He continued to form a green mark and imprinted it directly on his chest. As the green energy in the array continued to gather around Hong Shirtian, the green energy and the blood essence of the exotic beast, which contained the bloodline of the divine dragon, began to constantly change his body. But what Hong Shirtian didn't notice was that among the green energy gathered by the array, there was a faint flash of blue light. As the green energy and the blood essence of the exotic beast began to take effect, Hong Shirtian quickly turned into a majestic green divine dragon that was hundreds of meters long. Feeling the terrifying power he had after the transformation, Hong Shirtian couldn't help but want to roar to the sky in excitement. However, his expression changed when he couldn't control his body. Although the Grand Elder, who had the highest cultivation and was proficient in array formations, had always occupied the blue dragon's position when he used the 4 divisions spirit concentration formation to condense the body of the blue dragon. As the sect master, Hong Shirtian had also condensed the body of the blue dragon a few times. Based on his past experience, he knew that he didn't make a mistake in the imprint technique he had just used. The process of condensing the body of the blue dragon was also correct. Then, the only thing that could go wrong was the blood essence of the exotic beast used to help condense the body of the blue dragon. Thinking of this, Hong Shirtian immediately used his divine telekinesis to check on the condensed body of the blue dragon. Soon, he discovered something unusual at the position of the blue dragon's reverse scale. The reverse scale not only contained nearly half of the blue dragon's blood essence, but it also nurtured an independent space. Therefore, without any hesitation, Hong Shirtian immediately used 1/3 of his divine telekinesis to enter the independent space of the reverse scale. Who are you? As soon as his mind entered the space of the reverse scale, he immediately saw a blue serpent dragon that was over 50 meters long. It was gulping down the essence blood in the space of the reverse scale. Hong Shirtian could not help but call out in a panic when he saw this. The blood essence in the space of the reverse scale was the source of the blue dragon's power. It was also the foundation of the blue dragon's ability to mobilize the array formation's power. Therefore, the defense of the reverse scale space could be said to be the strongest part of the blue dragon's body. Even a rank 4 blue flood dragon wouldn't be able to easily break through the defense of the reverse scale space, let alone a mere rank 6 blue flood dragon. Not to mention the fact that the flood dragon had entered the reverse scale space without him noticing. Hello, Sect Master Hong. The blue flood dragon, who was gulping down the blood essence, immediately turned his head and greeted Hong Shirtian when he heard Hong Shirtian shout from behind him. You're the kid who pointed out the flaw in the array formation just now. The familiar voice instantly allowed Hong Shirtian to guess the true origin of the blue flood dragon. At the same time, he exclaimed in shock. Huh? Nodding his head, Lan Jiao chuckled and introduced himself in a serious manner. Sect Master Hong, let me formally introduce myself. My surname is Yu, and my name is Howren. I am now the Emperor's son-in-law of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. Could it be that you're Yu Howren, the Deputy Sect Master of the 100 Gate, who is both a peak grandmaster of alchemy and array formation and has the potential to be a top genius? After hearing Yu Howren's self-introduction, Hong Shirtian, who had been hearing a lot about a certain person recently, cried out involuntarily in shock. I didn't expect that even the dignified sect master of a top second-rate sect would have heard of my name, Yu Howren. I'm really flattered. Yu Howren couldn't help but tease Hong Shirtian when he saw him cry out involuntarily due to extreme shock. Chapter 843. In the 4 divisions spirit concentrating formation. After decades of experience as a sect master, Hong Shirtian immediately calmed down and began to think about why Yu Howren appeared in the space of the reverse scale. Then, he said with a look of sudden realization, No wonder you didn't let Han Guangbei introduce himself. You were worried that I wouldn't use the formation to condense the body of the divine beast after knowing your true background. Then, you wouldn't be able to find a chance to break the formation easily. You are indeed the sect master of the 4 divisions sect. Sect Master Hong's speculation was right. I'm sure that's my plan. Nodding, Yu Haoran, who had transformed into a blue dragon with his blood essence, admitted in an admiring tone. Master Yu, even if your plan works smoothly and you successfully enter the space of the blue dragon's reverse scale, can you break the 4 divisions spirit concentrating formation under my nose with your current strength of a martial king? Yu Haoran's admiring tone didn't make Hong Shitian feel relaxed at all. Instead, he was even more worried about what Yu Haoran would do next. Therefore, he couldn't help but use the method of inviting Yu Haoran to break the 4 divisions spirit concentrating formation so that he could prepare in advance. Of course, Yu Haoran, who had transformed into a blue dragon, said confidently, "As long as I can devour all the blood essence in the space of the reverse scale, I can cut off the supply of energy to the blue dragon. At that time, the blue dragon will lose almost half of its energy supply. Not only will its offensive and defensive power be reduced by 4 times, but it will also affect the operation of the 4 divisions spirit concentrating formation. With the attack of General Han and the other 6 9th level martial saints, it won't take long to destroy the 4 divisions spirit concentrating formation." Yu Haoran, who couldn't suppress his pride and his confidence, bragged like a villain. "Master Yu, everything you said just now is based on the premise that you can successfully devour all the blood essence in the space of the reverse scale." Hearing Yu Haoran reveal his next plan, Hong Shitian felt a trace of admiration. At the same time, he also felt a trace of pride in his heart for using the method of inviting the other party to reveal his plan. "Now, the incarnation of my divine will has appeared in the space of the reverse scale. Do you still have the chance to continue devouring the blood essence in the space?" Huh. After hearing Hong Shitian's threat, Yu Haoran couldn't help but raise his head and laugh. "Yu Haoran, what do you mean?" Yu Haoran looked up to the sky and laughed loudly, causing Hong Shitian's expression to change. "Sect Master Hong, you're merely an incarnation condensed from 1/3 of your divine sense. You want to stop me from devouring the blood essence in the reverse scale space. Aren't you underestimating the blue Jiao's blood essence, which has a divine dragon bloodline concentration of 30%? After Yu Haoran instantly stopped laughing, his face filled with disdain and mockery. At the same time, he activated the blue flood dragon bloodline. The blue flood dragon bloodline contained 30% of the divine dragon bloodline's density. Impossible. How can there be an exotic beast with 30% of the divine dragon bloodline in this world? Hong Shitian, who often used the blood essence of exotic beasts to activate the 4 symbols spirit concentration formation, didn't need to use his divine sense to check carefully. Just from the innate pressure in the blue flood dragon bloodline, he knew the purity of the divine dragon bloodline in the blue flood dragon bloodline. The blue flood dragon's blood essence, which contained 30% of the divine dragon bloodline, made him feel incredulous. At the same time, endless greed rose in his heart. If he could obtain the blue flood dragon's blood essence from Yu Haoran and give it to the first elder to use it to condense the blue dragon's body, then the power of the 4 symbols spirit concentration formation would increase by more than 10 times. Faced with the 4 symbols spirit concentration formation that was more than 10 times stronger, it could trap, defeat, and injure a quasi-emperor like Emperor Qin, who had gone through 3 tribulations, let alone easily killing a quasi-emperor. At that time, not only would the 4 symbols sect be able to survive Emperor Qin's ambition of conquering the southern region, but with the treasure they had been secretly refining, the 4 symbols sect would definitely be able to become a first-rate sect and become one of the true overlords of the southern region. Thinking of this, Hong Shitian suddenly closed his eyes and started to summon the 2/3 of his divine sense left in the blue dragon's consciousness. He planned to use all of his strength to kill Yu Haoran as quickly as possible and obtain the blue flood dragon's blood essence. Seeing Hong Shitian close his eyes and summon all of his divine sense, Yu Haoran shouted, "Not good." Then, he circulated the demonic qi in his body and quickly used a long-range martial technique, wanting to interrupt Hong Shitian's plan of summoning his divine sense. Oof. Facing Yu Haoran's long-range martial technique with the help of the blue flood dragon's blood essence, Hong Shirtian, who was quickly summoning his divine sense, snorted coldly. One-third of his divine sense instantly formed a defensive shield in front of him, blocking the long-range martial technique attack. Just as the blue flood dragon's long-range martial technique attack bombarded the defensive shield, Hong Shirtan, who had successfully summoned his divine sense, felt that something was wrong. Because when the long-range martial technique attack hit the shield, the impact formed by the attack was far from the power that Yu Haoran had mentioned when he threatened him. Could it be that there was a trick? However, when he opened his eyes slightly and saw Yu Haoran, who was emitting a strong blue light, obviously preparing a powerful secret technique, the doubts that emerged in his heart disappeared instantly. Presumably, the long-range attack, just now, was just Yu Haoran's way of harassing him to disturb the process of summoning his divine sense. Now, after discovering that the harassment method did not work, he was afraid that he would really use the secret technique of the blue flood dragon's blood essence. Thinking of this, Hong Shirtian increased the speed of gathering his divine sense while doing his best to strengthen the defensive ability of the shield in front of him, striving to be able to resist Yu Haoran's secret technique with the help of the blue flood dragon's blood essence. 5 seconds later, as the blue light emitted by the blue flood dragon became more and more dazzling, so much so that the entire reverse scale space was filled with blue light, 2/3 of his divine sense quickly entered the reverse scale space and instantly merged with Hong Shirtian's body. Haha! Hong Shirtian couldn't help but laugh wildly as his divine sense quickly condensed. Yu Haoran, today, not only will I take the blue flood dragon's blood essence, I will also capture you alive and use you to sign a 100 years non-aggression treaty with the Emperor Qin Kingdom. In the face of Hong Shirtian's arrogant laughter, Yu Haoran, who was desperately using the blue flood dragon's blood essence to display the secret technique, didn't give any response. This made Hong Shirtian, who had stopped laughing, feel that something was wrong. After using the palm force formed by the divine sense of a peak 5th grade martial saint to quickly clear the blue light that filled the reverse scale space, Hong Shirtian was stunned like an idiot. Because in the reverse scale space, not to mention the blue flood dragon that Yu Haoran created with the blood essence, even the blood essence of the exotic beast stored in the space had all disappeared. Chapter 844. Inside the Four Symbols Concentration Formation. When the space in the reverse scale began to shake violently, Hong Shirtian quickly snapped out of his daze. Carefully sensing the cause of the shaking in the reverse scale space, he knew that he had fallen into Yu Haoran's trap. Although the blue water dragon's blood essence contained 30% of the divine dragon's bloodline, it was only at the 6th level and did not pose a threat to him. The reason why Yu Haoran took the initiative to reveal the concentration of the blue water dragon's blood essence was probably to make him greedy, so that he would not be able to clearly discern the situation in front of him and subconsciously summon and control the consciousness of the blue dragon's body. He took the opportunity to leave the reverse scale space and occupy the formation to condense the blue dragon's consciousness space. After figuring all this out, Hong Shirtian felt boundless anger and immediately left the reverse scale space, intending to retake the blue dragon's consciousness space and regain control of the blue dragon's body. However, just as he left the reverse scale space, an indescribably terrifying repulsive force not only chased him out of the blue dragon's body, but also directly expelled him from the formation space of the Four Symbols Concentration Formation. Guangbei, capture Hong Shirtian alive immediately. Han Guangbei, who was desperately attacking the formation with Lan Rong and the others, was shocked by Hong Shirtian's sudden appearance outside the formation. He thought that Hong Shirtian wanted to sneak up on him while he was unprepared. However, when he heard Yu Haoran's voice from inside the formation, Han Guangbei immediately howled in excitement. He appeared beside Hong Shirtian like lightning and took advantage of Hong Shirtian's bewilderment to easily knock him out and capture him alive. Even the Four Symbols sect's leader, Hong Shirtian, was forcefully expelled from the formation space by Yu Haoran. Thus, the four symbols concentration formation, which had lost its strongest power, would not last long before it was broken. Therefore, Lan Rong and the others, who were attacking the formation, were suddenly ecstatic, and the power of their attacks became stronger and stronger. Sect leader, the White Tiger, who was desperately defending against everyone's attacks, immediately shouted in panic after seeing Hong Shitian knocked out by Han Beiguang. Soon after, the White Tiger was horrified to discover that the energy of the array formation in its body was slowly draining away. The White Tiger turned to look at the Blue Dragon, who was managing the operation of the formation in midair. It discovered that the Blue Dragon was not only extracting the power of the formation from its body, but also the power of the Black Tortoise and Vermilion Bird. He thought of the young man who had forced his way into the formation when it was fully activated. He thought of the young man's method of accurately discovering the flaws in the formation with only a trace of cyan energy. The White Tiger suspected that the other party was very likely an expert who was proficient in formations. He might even be an expert who had reached the Grandmaster realm in formations. Recalling Han Guangbei's respect for that young man, and then combining it with the people who were in the limelight in the Emperor Qin Kingdom recently, White Tiger immediately guessed the young man's origin. Yu Haoran, who had reached the peak of the Grandmaster realm in both alchemy and formations, who possessed a secret technique that could easily kill quasi-martial venerables, and who had the potential to be a top monster. The moment the White Tiger guessed Yu Haoran's origin, he knew that the Four Symbols sect, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, was about to be completely turned into a pile of ruins under the attack of 100,000 elite soldiers from the Emperor Qin Kingdom. Since the sect that protected him was about to be destroyed, why should he continue to protect it at the risk of his life? Therefore, the White Tiger, who had the intention to retreat, used the remaining power of the array formation in its body to instantly break through the formation and quickly escape from the Four Symbols sect. General Qi, immediately go after Vice Sect Leader Qian. I want to see him alive and dead. Yu Haoran, who had controlled the clone of the Blue Dragon to fully extract the power of the formation, and then worked with his second clone to condense the formation flags of the Four Symbols spirit-focusing formation, had not thought that Vice Sect Leader Qian, who had transformed into the White Tiger, would react so quickly and decisively to escape, such that he could not use the formation to trap him at all. Thinking of how he needed to eliminate the root of the problem, Yu Haoran immediately instructed Qi Weixian, who had reached the late 9th grade of the Martial Saint realm and comprehended the power of the laws of speed. Your subordinate understands. Withdrawing the power of the attacking formation, Qi Weixian acknowledged the order and instantly vanished from where he was. General Lin immediately informed the army to quickly approach the formation. Try to surround the entire Four Symbols sect after the formation is destroyed. Having lost the two divine beasts responsible for attacking, the Blue Dragon and the White Tiger, the Four Symbols spirit-focusing formation was already not far from being destroyed. Now, he did not need the coordination of the generals on the outside to ensure that the entire Four Symbols sect could be completely destroyed. Therefore, just as Qi Weixian went to pursue Vice Sect Leader Qian, Yu Haoran instructed the remaining generals. Your subordinate understands. The excited Lin Yuanxiang acknowledged the order before turning around and sprinting to the rear. General Wu, General Li, General Yuan, be prepared to enter the Four Symbols sect at any time. Your subordinate understands. The Four Symbols concentration formation that even great General Gu Yu had no way of dealing with, that had troubled the Northern Army for more than 10 days, didn't even last 10 minutes, was easily broken through by Yu Haoran without expending a single soldier. Even as Lan Rong and the others felt excited, deep admiration for Yu Haoran also rose in their hearts. Lord Son-in-law, I surrender. Master Yu, I surrender. As the power of the formation within their bodies was unceasingly extracted, Vice Sect Leader Xia and the Second Elder, who could no longer maintain their divine beast bodies, hurriedly knelt down and surrendered. Using the power of the formation, Vice Sect Leader Xia and the second elder were expelled from the formation and sent directly to Han Guangbei's side. Guangbei, seal their power and escort them back to Xianyang City for the emperor to deal with. Yes, sir. Following the order, Han Guangbei immediately used a special method to completely seal the two of them and tie them together with Hong Shitian. Brother Ran, how much longer will it take to completely condense the formation flags of the four symbols spirit-focusing formation? As Vice Sect Leader Qian took the initiative to escape and Vice Sect Leader Xia and the second elder surrendered, the second clone's speed of condensing the formation rapidly increased as well. However, Yu Haoran could not help but ask anxiously when he saw that Lin Yuanxiang, who had gone to inform the army to speed up, had returned and replaced Han Guangbei to watch over Hong Shitian and the other two. This was because he had not forgotten how cold and distrustful the 100,000 elite soldiers had treated him when he first met them. He had not forgotten the resentment that had accumulated in his heart. So he wanted to use the remaining power of the formation to completely detonate the four symbols spirit-focusing formation the moment the army arrived at the formation. With the help of the power generated from the explosion of the formation, the 100,000 elite soldiers would be taught a profound lesson and a deep memory that they would never be able to erase. Brother Yu, if you want to completely retain the essence of the ancient formation, you need to make no mistakes during the condensation process. With my current cultivation in formations, I need at least half an hour to successfully condense the formation flags of the four symbols spirit-focusing formation. The second clone looked up at the anxious Yu Haoran and said helplessly, "Don't worry, Yu Haoran." Chapter 845. Inside the Four Divisions Concentration Formation. With the speed of the 100,000 elite soldiers, they would be able to reach the formation in less than 3 minutes. If the Four Divisions Concentration Formation was detonated half an hour later, it would not be able to create the most shocking scene and effect. This made Yu Haoran very disappointed. Brother Yu, if Thaling could help, I would be able to successfully condense the formation flags in 2 minutes at most. The second doppelganger hurriedly reminded him when he sensed the disappointment of the main body. As soon as the second doppelganger's voice fell, Yu Haoran immediately shouted in the direction of Victor, "Thaling, quickly come out and help." Coming. The detonation of the Four Divisions Concentration Formation was related to whether or not Yu Haoran could create a strong shock in front of the 100,000 elite soldiers and establish absolute authority. Thaling, who was already prepared, immediately took over from the second doppelganger and accelerated the speed of condensing the formation flags. Brother G, do you think the Prince Consort has really broken through the Four Divisions Concentration Formation? One of the generals who had sped up asked with a worried expression. If Yu Haoran succeeded in breaking through the Four Divisions Concentration Formation, not only would he be rewarded with the greatest merit, he would also win the trust and support of the 100,000 elite soldiers and would truly be in charge of the Northern Army. At the same time, Lan Rong and the other generals who had assisted in breaking through the formation would also immediately surpass them in merit and prestige. If that was the case, these generals who were at odds with Yu Haoran would probably have a hard time in the Northern Army. TSK. After hearing his colleague's worried question, Ji Qingyu immediately sneered with disdain and said with a mocking tone, "Brother Wu, even if Yu Haoran's formation skills are very good and he could find the flaws of the Four Divisions Concentration Formation, how could he break through the formation that even the general couldn't break through in less than 10 minutes? Who are they trying to fool? Brother G, if the Prince Consort didn't break through the Four Divisions Concentration Formation, then why did he ask General Lin to tell us to speed up our march?" Ji Qingyu's disdainful mockery did not dispel the worry in General Wu's heart. He still asked worriedly. According to this general speculation, Yu Haoran should have found a flaw in the formation. However, with the strength of the few of them, I'm afraid it's not enough to break through the formation's flaw. Therefore, I'm guessing that he wants to gather 100,000 elite soldiers to attack the flaws in the formation at the same time, helping him break the Four Symbols Concentration Formation. That makes sense. After hearing Ji Qingyu's speculation, General Wu nodded in agreement. At the same time, he happened to see the four symbols sect enveloped by the formation. Brother Ji, we've arrived. When Ji Qingyu saw the four symbols sect being enveloped by the formation, he smiled and said, Brother Wu, we'll soon find out whether or not my speculation is correct. However, before the smile on his face could fully blossom, the formation enveloping the four symbols sect suddenly exploded. Boom! Following the explosion of the formation, a deafening roar caused the 100,000 elite soldiers who were speeding up to subconsciously stop in their tracks. After the deafening roar, the shock waves from the explosion of the formation destroyed the trees and flowers around the formation, quickly approaching the 100,000 elite soldiers. Form the defensive formation immediately. Lan Rong, who had withstood the shock waves from the explosion of the formation, immediately reminded the 100,000 elite soldiers who stood rooted to the spot like fools. After hearing Lan Rong's reminder, the 100,000 elite soldiers immediately formed a squiggly formation and withstood the shock waves with relative ease. Roar! The moment the shock waves disappeared, just as the 100,000 elite soldiers were filled with shock, a deafening roar came from above the explosion of the formation. Accompanied by a roar that resounded through the clouds, a majestic azure dragon that was several hundred meters long flew out of the clouds. The majestic azure dragon first circled around the entire four symbols sect before giving orders to Lan Rong and the others in front of the formation. Lan Rong Li Quanqing, Kahai, he my orders. He my orders. Lan Rong and the others immediately gathered together before dropping to one knee and accepting the order with great respect. Enter the four symbols sect immediately and capture and kill all experts above the martial saint realm alive. Yes, sir. After getting up, Lan Rong and the others immediately charged into the four symbols sect like a gust of wind. Very soon, the sounds of battle rang out. Han Guangbei, he my orders. Yu Haoran, who had maintained his blue dragon transformation, ignored the sounds of battle within the four symbols sect and ordered the captain of his bodyguards. Yes, sir. Han Guangbei didn't know what good things were waiting for him, so he knelt down on one knee and accepted the order with a look of anticipation. Choose 10 of your direct subordinates and immediately enter the four symbols sect. Find the location of the treasury as quickly as possible. Then, protect it well, and wait for this prince consort's arrival. Yes, sir. As it turned out, Han Guangbei was going to find and guard the most important treasury of the four symbols sect. Han Guangbei immediately accepted the order excitedly when he heard Yu Haoran's orders. Actually, Han Guangbei could not be blamed for being so excited. This was because everyone present knew that not only was Yu Haoran the emperor's most valued son-in-law, but he was also the vice-master of the 100 Qi Gate, a peak grandmaster in the way of pills and formations. With his insight and status, there were probably not many treasures in the treasury of a measly second-rate sect, like the four symbols sect, that could catch his eye. As such, wouldn't the treasures that he did not want end up in the hands of his loyal captain of his bodyguards, Han Guangbei? The eyes of General Wu and the other two generals were filled with envy and jealousy, as well as deep regret, when they saw Han Guangbei smile like a blooming flower. As for Ji Qingyu, he stood there in a daze. He did not hear Yu Haoran's orders at all. Lin Yuanxiang, listen up. Yu Haoran immediately ordered Lin Yuanxiang after Han Guangbei had chosen 10 peak 9th grade martial kings to enter the four symbols sect. Yes, sir. It was finally Lin Yuanxiang's turn to break the four-division spirit focusing formation and flatten the four symbols sect. The excited Lin Yuanxiang accepted the order with an unusually loud and clear voice. At the same time, it also roused Ji Qingyu from his daze. Immediately lead the people under your command. Lin Yuanxiang, General Wu Rong, Captain Han Guangbei, General Li Quanqing, General Ai Hai, and General Qi Weixian into the four symbols sect. Capture and kill all the elders, deacons, and disciples of the four symbols sect alive. Yes, sir. Lin Yuanxiang was moved when he saw that Yu Haoran had not forgotten about Qi Weixian, who had gone to capture Vice Master Qian. He even felt the urge to follow him to the death. Chapter 846. Differential Treatment. That's right. Yu Haoran had made a very obvious differential treatment in the series of arrangements just now. All those who obeyed and supported him would not only obtain sufficient military merits and prestige, but would also obtain tangible benefits. As for those who disobeyed him or chose to go against him, they wouldn't be able to gain any benefits from it, because they would be deliberately targeted by him in the future. Ji Qingyu, Wu Fanghua, Wu Wenxiang, Zhang Zheang, Lin Zhongming, Meng Zhanda, all generals he might order. The lofty Yu Haoran lowered his head to look at Ji Qingyu and the others in front of the formation. His cold eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness, and his tone was as cold as if he was talking to strangers. This subordinate obeys. Finally, it was their turn. After hearing Yu Haoran's order, Ji Qingyu and the other 5 hurriedly stepped forward and knelt on one knee as they excitedly accepted the order. Take your elite troops and surround the entire 4 symbols sect for this son-in-law. Don't let a single person escape. After giving the order, Yu Haoran's blue dragon form stared at Ji Qingyu and Wu Wenhua with its large dragon eyes, not concealing its deliberate threat in the slightest. If you let a single person escape, don't blame this son-in-law for serving you with military law. Son-in-law, this general refuses to accept this. It was fine if he could not obtain any tangible benefits, but who told him to not obediently submit? But now, even a life of suffering and suffering had to bear a certain amount of risk. Ji Qingyu, who had never received such treatment, immediately stood up to express his dissatisfaction. General Ji, please remember that you are a soldier. A soldier's duty is to obey orders, not to question your superior. Facing Ji Qingyu, who had taken the initiative to question him, Yu Haoran did not immediately turn hostile and attack. Instead, he criticized and lectured like a very patient superior. Son-in-law, even if I, Ji Qingyu, have offended you, I have no objections if you want to take revenge. Completely ignoring Yu Haoran's merciful criticism, Ji Qingyu leaned slightly to the side and pointed at the more than 50,000 soldiers behind him who were full of grievances and dissatisfaction, speaking up for them. But these soldiers behind me who are fighting for the country did not offend you. Why do you want to punish them as well? Son-in-law, we refuse to accept this. Son-in-law, we refuse to accept this. Under Ji Qingyu's deliberate provocation, the soldiers who belonged to him took the lead in protesting, then led the tens of thousands of soldiers to follow suit. Yu Haoran looked at Ji Qingyu, who had a complacent look in his eyes, and heard the overwhelming protests. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Then he swung his dragon tail and flew above the 50,000 elite soldiers, questioning them with a cold expression. Why do you refuse to accept this? Prince Consort, anyone with a discerning eye can see that your series of arrangements just now are clearly targeted at us. Faced with Yu Haoran's question, a military officer who had reached the peak of the 3rd grade Martial Saint realm took the initiative to step forward and questioned. But just as General Ji said, we ordinary soldiers have never offended you. Why are you deliberately targeting us? The reason. Facing the question, to answer to the question, to the Ji Qingyu's, to this. Twos. You. If he admitted the reason why he treated them differently, the Ji Qingyu would not know how to continue to refute. However, under the reminder of Ji Qingyu's eyes, the Ji Qingyu took a deep breath and threatened with a look of grief and indignation. Son-in-law, if you don't take back your order just now, then don't blame us who are fighting for the country for jointly reporting you to the Grand Council and the Imperial Court. Facing the Ji Qingyu's threat, Yu Haoran suddenly swung his dragon tail and flew directly to the 4 symbols sect. He also left behind a sentence that made the 50,000 soldiers angry and helpless. Go ahead. Even if you directly report to the Emperor, I don't care. But before the Imperial Court issues a decree to punish me, as the Commander's seal, I have the right to order you. So, my order is still the same. As long as you let one person go, don't blame the military law for being merciless. Brother G, I'll take some men to guard the west. Seeing Yu Haoran quickly fly into the Four Symbols sect, Wu Wenxiang put away the regret in his eyes and reminded Ji Qingyu. He then took his men and went straight to the west of the Four Symbols sect. Brother Ji, bear with it for a while and calm down for a while. Take a step back and you'll have a better view. I'll take some men to guard the east. Meng Zhanda, who had chosen to accept reality, persuaded Ji Qingyu and took his men to guard the east of the Four Symbols sect. I'll go support General Meng. In order to draw a clear line between himself and Ji Qingyu, Zhang Ziyang did not even greet him. He directly indicated the direction he wanted to guard and left with his men. Then I'll go support General Wu Wenxiang. Zhang Zihang's action also strengthened Lin Zhoming's confidence. After indicating the direction he wanted to guard, he quickly left with his men. Brother Ji, what do you think? Wu Fanghua looked at Ji Qingyu expectantly. Wu Fanghua was rather tempted when he saw the four generals of his faction choose to yield one after another. However, the clan he belonged to had a special relationship with the clan behind Ji Qingyu. Sometimes, he had no choice but to listen to Ji Qingyu's orders. Otherwise, why would he purposely go against Yu Haoran and go against the emperor's son-in-law that the emperor regarded so highly? Brother Wu, your Wu clan can't afford to offend Yu Haoran. In order to avoid you being used as a chicken to intimidate us, it's best that you first go and guard the south. Faced with Wu Fanghua's slightly tempted inquiry, Ji Qingyu lightly sighed before instructing. Then what about you, Brother Ji? Wu Fanghua secretly sighed in relief when Ji Qingyu agreed to let him listen to Yu Haoran's orders and guard the south where the risk was the least. However, he felt that Ji Qingyu's tone was a little off, so he hurriedly asked, "Umph." Ji Qingyu sneered before raising his head to look at the Four Symbols sect. His eyes were filled with provocation. I won't be going anywhere. What about the emperor's son-in-law? Wu Fanghua asked worriedly. I'd like to see if Yu Haoran dares to take the risk of offending my Ji clan and the emperor and punish me according to military law. Ji Qingyu said confidently. Wu Fanghua shook his head and didn't say anything else when he saw that Ji Qingyu was planning to directly challenge Yu Haoran's military might. This was because he knew that Ji Qingyu's true confidence didn't come from the Ji clan, but rather from his sister who was deeply doted on by the emperor and the empress dowager. She was very likely to become the head of the six palaces. Chapter 847. Due to work adjustments, apart from the one chapter in the morning, the rest of the chapters were updated in the afternoon and evening. Within the Four Symbols sect, Yu Haoran used the power of the formation that Thaling had left behind to maintain the blue dragon form. He ignored the angry glares of the people behind him and slowly flew into the Four Symbols sect. As a sect that had existed for over 10,000 years and occupied a blessed land with abundant spiritual qi, the number of disciples in the Four Symbols sect far exceeded the 100 qi gate, reaching a shocking 40,000. However, the disciples of the Four Symbols sect were unable to effectively defend or counterattack against 50,000 well-equipped and well-trained elite soldiers. Very soon, they were in danger of being massacred. Some of the talented disciples who tried to force their way out under the protection of their seniors were forcefully stopped by a few martial saint captains. They were directly knocked unconscious and captured alive. This was because a portion of these talented disciples could be transformed into people of the Emperor Qin through modification and persuasion. They could then be used as a source of soldiers to replenish the army. This was also one of the methods of using battle to nurture battle. Apart from the Grand Elder who had left the sect beforehand, and a few disciples who had gone out to train, no one else could escape from the 50,000 well-equipped elite soldiers. The destruction of the Four Symbols sect was already a fact. Not only had he personally experienced the destruction of a sect in his past life, but he had also witnessed the tragic state of countless sects and clans being destroyed. He had already become numb to this. As a result, Yu Haoran did not feel the slightest ripple in his heart as he watched the disciples of the Four Symbols sect being suppressed and slaughtered. Yu Haoran, it looks like Ji Qingyu intends to challenge your authority. Just as Yu Haoran controlled the Blue Dragon's body and planned to find Han Guangbei, who was guarding the treasury, Thaling's voice suddenly rang out in his consciousness. Just as I expected, Yu Haoran could not help but sneer when he heard Thaling's reminder. Through Han Guangbei's detailed introduction of each of the generals, he knew that Ji Qingyu, with his deep foundation, would definitely not submit to him. Even when faced with his deliberately targeted orders, Ji Qingyu would definitely not obediently carry them out. Therefore, when he entered the Four Symbols sect, he had asked Thaling to monitor Ji Qingyu's every move to see if he was planning to deceive him. The result was exactly as he had expected. General Lin, pick a dozen disciples with average talent and potential and have them escape the Four Symbols sect through the north. After the Four Symbols sect was completely destroyed, although he would hand over the commander's seal and leave the northern army, he had to face Ji Qingyu, who had provoked him first. If he did not give a strong counterattack, how could he be at ease handing over the northern army to his trusted aide? After all, 100,000 elite soldiers were a very powerful force. They might be useful in the future battles on the path of cultivation. Yes, Prince Consort. Although he did not know why Yu Haoran had purposefully released a group of disciples of the Four Symbols sect, Lin Yuanxiang, who had already chosen to submit and swear loyalty, had to carry out his orders first. He personally selected 15 of them who were slightly older and had very ordinary potential. Even if they escaped from the Four Symbols sect, they would not cause any trouble in the future. Moreover, these disciples had successfully escaped the Four Symbols sect through the north under his personal arrangements. Yu Haoran nodded in satisfaction when he saw Lin Yuanxiang's cautious actions. Afterwards, he swung his tail and slowly flew above the treasury of the Four Symbols sect. After dispersing the formation energy in the Blue Dragon's body, Yu Haoran returned to his original appearance and slowly landed before the 6th floor of the treasury. Prince Consort, Han Guangbei immediately bowed with a smile when he saw Yu Haoran land in front of the treasury. Well done. Yu Haoran nodded and praised when he saw the dozen or so corpses on the west side of the treasury, especially the 3 martial saints in the robes of elders. It is precisely because of Prince Consort's foresight that this subordinate was able to ensure the safety of the treasury. Faced with Yu Haoran's praise, Han Guangbei immediately flattered him with a smile. Guangbei, tell your trusted men to guard the treasury. Follow me into the treasury. Everyone was willing to listen to flattery. Yu Haoran was no exception. As a result, he directly invited Han Guangbei into the treasury with him in a good mood. Thank you for your kindness, Prince Consort. Han Guangbei took 3 deep breaths in succession when he heard Yu Haoran's orders. Only then did he suppress his excitement. After all, with Yu Haoran's vision and status, there wouldn't be many treasures in the treasury that could catch his eye. Therefore, Han Guangbei could take whatever he wanted from the remaining treasures and large amounts of resources. Although he might not be able to use those treasures, he still had many relatives and trusted aides that he needed to nurture. He had always been under a lot of pressure. After instructing his 12 trusted aides to guard the treasury, Han Guangbei personally blasted open the door of the treasury. Then, he respectfully waited for Yu Haoran to enter. Let's go. Yu Haoran calmly instructed as he walked to the door of the treasury that had been blasted open. Then, he stepped into the treasury. Although the concentration of spiritual qi on the first floor of the treasury had been completely vaporized, Yu Haoran, who had just experienced the baptism of the pure and rich spiritual qi of the 3rd grade spiritual vein, did not feel a trace of joy in his heart. He walked to the deepest part of the first floor of the treasury and used the wind to directly open the 13 wooden chests placed side by side in front of him. Then, he found that all the chests were stored with high-quality spiritual stones of the 5th grade from the 1st grade to the 9th grade. He nodded with slight satisfaction and then put all 13 chests into the victor. Guangbei, I allow you to take 1/5 of the spiritual stones in the treasury. Yu Haoran turned and went straight to the stairs that led to the second floor of the treasury. However, when he saw Han Guangbei's eager expression, he reminded him with a smile. "Thank you for your gift, Prince Consort. In the future, I will definitely." The number of spiritual stones on the first floor of the treasury, if all of them were to be exchanged for ninth-grade spiritual stones, the total number would probably reach hundreds of billions. 1/5 of hundreds of billions was a terrifying amount of more than 30 billion. For Han Guangbei, this was a huge amount of wealth that he had never seen or imagined in his decades of cultivation. Therefore, he, who could not suppress the excitement in his heart, directly knelt down and intended to swear his loyalty. However, Yu Haoran shook his head to stop him from swearing his loyalty and reminded him, "Collect the spiritual stones faster. I'll wait for you on the second floor of the treasury." Then, Yu Haoran went to the second floor of the treasury through the stairs. Looking at the dozens of rows of specially made wooden shelves in front of him, where tens of thousands of different types and grades of medicinal herbs were placed, Yu Haoran, who had been calm and collected, finally had a trace of interest. Anyway, there was plenty of time, and he was not in a hurry to leave the treasury immediately. Chapter 848. In the treasury of the Four Symbols sect. While passing by Weishan City, the city lord of Weishan City, Lan Weisheng, had suffered a backlash due to excessive self-blame and guilt. He had no choice but to refine a large number of mind-calming pills to treat him and discovered a small hidden danger in his body. That was, although his stock of medicinal herbs was very complete, the amount stored was too small, and most of them could only be used to refine one set. If he were to encounter such a situation in the future, especially if the people closest to him were to encounter such a situation, because of the lack of medicinal herbs, he could only watch helplessly as something happened to his loved ones. Wouldn't he regret it to death? Moreover, with the victor and several storage rings, he did not lack storage space. Therefore, although most of the tens of thousands of medicinal herbs on the second floor of the treasury were not of high quality, Yu Haoran did not give up on all of them. Instead, he chose nearly 3,000 medicinal herbs according to the different effects of the pills that could be refined. Only then did he consider the selection to be over. Guangbei, this prince consort allows you to choose 1,000 medicinal herbs of various grades. Yu Haoran reminded Han Guangbei, who had just entered the second floor of the treasury, with a smile. Then, he went up the stairs to the third floor of the treasury. Looking at the thousands of bottles of pills placed on the wooden shelf of the third floor of the treasury, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and used his divine sense to check the grade and origin of the pills marked on the bottles. Unfortunately, although there were more than 1,000 bottles of pills, there were very few pills that could really tempt him. In the end, he only chose 2 bottles that could improve his mental state cultivation, 2 bottles that could assist in improving the grade of the physical body, and 3 bottles of high-quality pills for healing. Turning his head to look at the stairs leading to the second floor of the treasury, Yu Haoran found that Han Guangbei had not come up yet, so he stood in place and planned to wait for him for a while. However, at this moment, the thawing in his sea of consciousness suddenly reminded him. Yu Haoran immediately go to the middle of the 19th row, in front of the bottle marked with the body-strengthening pill. Feeling a trace of surprise in the thawing's tone, Yu Haoran immediately appeared in the middle of the 19th row and quickly found the bottle marked with the body-strengthening pill. Yu Haoran, there's no danger. You can open it and take a look. Seeing that Yu Haoran did not take out the pill bottle, Thawing knew what he was afraid of, so he took the initiative to remind him. He took the pill bottle from the wooden shelf and opened it. Yu Haoran did not need to pour out the pills from the bottle. Just from the faint fragrance of the pills, he knew why Thawing's tone of warning was filled with surprise. This was because the pill bottle labeled with the body refining pill didn't contain a body refining pill, but a marrow cultivation pill that could strengthen one's foundation and increase one's potential. Among the tens of thousands of medicinal pills that assisted martial artists in their cultivation, there were some that targeted meridians and blood vessels, some that targeted bones and internal organs, and there were even medicinal pills that targeted hair. The only thing missing was a pill that targeted bone marrow. In his previous life, he had ventured into countless ruins and dangerous places. He had obtained more than 1,000 kinds of pill recipes, but there was no pill recipe that specifically targeted bone marrow. Although the tempering of the bone marrow did not affect one's foundation and potential, being able to build a perfect body would definitely bring about unexpected benefits in the future. And the marrow cultivation pill happened to target the bone marrow that was hidden in the bones. Thowling, please check the remaining pill bottles and see if there are any pills that were misplaced. Howard happily put away the marrow cultivation pill and reminded him expectantly. Howard, don't think too much. You should be satisfied that you were able to obtain the marrow cultivation pill by accident. Thowling, who had already used his spiritual sense to check everything, felt depressed and could not help but criticize. Isn't it because of the unexpected joy that aroused the greed in my heart? Facing Thowling's criticism, Howard did not care and laughed twice. At this time, Han Guangbei had just entered the 3rd floor of the treasury. Guangbei, this prince consort, allows you to choose 300 bottles of pills of different grades. Pointing to the pill bottles on the wooden shelf, Howard reminded him. Then, he walked to the stairs that led to the 4th floor of the treasury. Even though Han Guangbei had experienced the impact of spirit stones and medicinal herbs and his mind had been greatly tempered, he still could not help but feel very excited when he heard the reward of the pills. After all, the effect of spirit stones to assist in cultivation was far from comparable to that of pills. And before the medicinal herbs were refined into pills, the effect of spirit stones to assist in cultivation was even stronger. Through the stairs to the 4th floor of the treasury, a fragrant smell of books rushed to his face. After using his spiritual sense to scan the hundreds of mental cultivation methods, martial arts, and secret methods placed on more than a dozen bookshelves, Howard walked to the jade slips placed on the deepest bookshelf while reminding Thowling to check if there were any suitable mental cultivation methods. Martial arts and secret methods for him were suitable for training his team. The number of jade slips placed on the deep bookshelf of the treasury was not very many, only 7 in total. He reached out and picked up a jade slip. First, he used his spiritual sense to check it, then used his mind to sense it. After confirming that there was no danger, his consciousness entered the jade slip. After only 3 seconds, a joyful expression appeared on his face. The jade slip that he had just read was not some shocking legacy mental cultivation method, nor was it a top-notch martial art. Instead, it was a record of what an ancestor of the 4 Symbols sect who liked to travel left behind. Howard did not lack top-notch mental cultivation methods and martial arts. Now, he urgently needed to increase his experience, and this jade slip recorded the travels that he rarely went to in his previous life. Not only could it increase his experience, it would also be of unimaginable help to his future training. The ancestor of the 4 Symbols sect who liked to travel had reached the peak of the 7th grade martial saint. He had been to many places in his life and left behind a lot of information. It was impossible to finish reading it in a short time. Therefore, Howard forcefully withdrew from his consciousness. Then, as he happily kept the jade slip, he looked at the 2nd jade slip. Using the same method, after confirming that there was no danger in the jade slip, his consciousness entered the jade slip. After only 3 seconds, Howard withdrew from his consciousness and casually threw the jade slip aside. This was because that jade slip recorded the cultivation method of the Earth stage, which was of no use to him. Using the same method, after confirming that there was no danger in the 3rd jade slip, his consciousness immediately entered the jade slip. But just as his consciousness entered the space of the jade slip, the originally unresponsive telepathy immediately warned him of extreme danger. Unfortunately, by the time his consciousness felt the warning, the space of the jade slip had already been completely sealed. Forcing himself to quickly calm down, he quickly sensed the 2nd doppelganger in the victor. Fortunately, although his consciousness could not leave the completely sealed space of the jade slip, he was able to contact the 2nd doppelganger. He immediately told the second doppelganger to inform the Thaling of the danger he was currently in and told him to think of a way to open the seal of the jade slip. Then, he ordered the second doppelganger to leave the victor and temporarily replace him in order to prevent Han Guangbei, who had entered the fourth floor of the treasury, from noticing anything unusual. Chapter 849. In the Space of the Jade Slip. After everything was arranged properly, Yuhaoran was about to carefully observe the space of the jade slip filled with gray gas in front of him when he suddenly heard a triumphant laughter. Who is it? His gaze quickly swept through the space of the jade slip, but found nothing. The result of finding nothing made Yuhaoran withdraw his gaze, and there was a triumphant laughter in the space of the jade slip again. At this time, when the laughter stopped and the sound echoed, Yuhaoran's gaze immediately turned to a trace of gray gas only 5 meters away from him. "Come out." Staring at the gray gas, Yuhaoran said coldly, "A trace of my divine thought has been left in the space of the jade slip for almost 1,000 years." With the voice of self-narration, the gray gas in Yuhaoran's sight gradually condensed into an old man in a gray robe, with a dignified appearance and a fierce temperament. Instinctively taking 2 steps back, Yuhaoran looked up at the old man in the gray robe. The eyes of the condensed consciousness showed an incomparably dignified look. The old man in the gray robe just called him deity. Deity referred to a peerless expert whose cultivation had broken through the martial venerable realm. It was a kind of self-designation when they usually communicated. The old man in the gray robe, condensed by the remnant consciousness in front of him, turned out to be a peerless expert of the martial venerable realm. How could this not make Yuhaoran feel frightened and desperate? Ignoring Yuhaoran, who instinctively retreated and showed fear and despair in his emotions, the old man in the gray robe continued to sigh. During this period, nearly 10,000 consciousnesses entered the space of the jade slip, and there was no lack of geniuses with monstrous potential. However, no consciousness has ever been able to discover the existence of my divine thought. And you are the first one. Speaking of this, the old man in the gray robe looked at Yuhaoran with a smile and asked in an expectant tone, "Young man, are you willing to be my disciple and accept my legacy? You want to accept me as your disciple?" Yuhaoran asked in disbelief that the old man in the gray robe intended to accept him as his disciple. "Yes." Nodding, the old man in the gray robe confirmed. Why? Just because he had discovered the location of his remnant consciousness. He wanted to take him in as a disciple and inherit his mantle as a martial honorable. Yuhaoran asked in disbelief when faced with such a good thing that fell from the sky. "Young man, the comprehension ability, willpower, courage, and potential you possess the qualifications to accept my mantle," the gray-robed old man explained. "Senior, you said in your autobiography that in the past 1,000 years, nearly 10,000 consciousnesses have entered the space in the jade slip, and there is no lack of geniuses with monstrous potential among them." Yuhaoran refuted the old man's explanation in disbelief. Junior doesn't believe that among the nearly 10,000 consciousnesses, there isn't a disciple who is suitable to inherit Senior's mantle. His reaction is very quick, and his observation skills are very strong. In the face of Yuhaoran's rebuttal, the gray-robed old man did not have the slightest intention of explaining. Instead, his eyes lit up as he planned to forcefully take Yuhaoran in as a disciple. "Young man, even if you don't want to acknowledge me as your master now, I will still force you to accept my legacy. What if I choose to refuse?" Yuhaoran's face darkened as he firmly refused. In the face of Yuhaoran's firm refusal, the gray-robed old man suddenly laughed proudly. After laughing for nearly a minute, the gray-robed old man quickly stopped laughing and suddenly pointed at Yuhaoran. Then, Yuhaoran realized that the body formed by his consciousness was not only unable to move, but also unable to speak. "Young man, in front of me, do you have the right to refuse?" The gray-robed old man slowly floated in front of Yuhaoran and said in a very domineering tone. Then, the gray-robed old man closed his eyes, and a terrifying aura that caused the entire space in the jade slip to begin to crack slowly rose from his body. Fortunately, the gray-robed old man's intention to take Howard in as a disciple made the aura released by the gray-robed old man automatically avoid him. Otherwise, the consciousness that did not bear any power would not be able to withstand the pressure of the aura. As the terrifying aura continued to rise, a trace of gray energy slowly seeped out from the gray-robed old man's forehead. As the gray energy seeped out, the gray-robed old man's body also began to become illusory. At this moment, Howard's heart had a trace of belief that the gray-robed old man really wanted to take him as a disciple. However, he could not accept the gray-robed old man's actions. Young man, once you've accepted my legacy, the strand of consciousness that I left in the jade slip will completely vanish. Seeing the anger in Howard's eyes gradually ease and the body formed by his consciousness no longer struggling, the gray-robed old man knew that his actions just now had made Howard believe in his sincerity in taking him as a disciple. Immediately, a kind smile appeared on his face. Now, I will not ask you to call me master. However, I will always remember that you are the only disciple of the Heaven Punisher Demon Supremacy. After that, the gray-robed old man, who called himself the Heaven Punisher Demon Supremacy, forcibly merged the gray energy floating in front of his forehead into Howard's consciousness. Disciple, in the legacy that I left for you, there are my cultivation methods, martial skills, realms, and experiences in my life. Due to my personality, I have made countless enemies in my life. Among them, there is no lack of almighty experts who are at the level of Emperor Wu. Therefore, taking advantage of the last bit of time before my consciousness disappears, I will give you a warning. Before you break through to the level of Emperor Wu, you cannot expose the cultivation methods that I inherited, nor can you avenge me. As the gray-robed old man's remnant consciousness completely disappeared, the entire jade slip space suddenly collapsed in a destructive manner. Before he could comprehend the legacy that the gray-robed old man had left behind, Howard took advantage of the moment when the jade slip space seal was broken and his consciousness instantly returned to his body. Just as his consciousness returned to his body, the jade slip in his hand immediately turned into white powder. Brother Ran, you continue to stay outside the victor and replace me. In order to prevent Han Guangbei, who had entered the 4th level of the treasury, from discovering anything unusual, the second clone that had temporarily replaced Howard had sent him into the victor when he left the victor. Therefore, Howard, who was anxious to comprehend the legacy that the gray-robed old man had left behind, instructed the second clone outside the victor and immediately sat down cross-legged. Then, he signaled for Thowling to activate the victor's ability to accelerate time. He wanted to successfully accept the gray-robed old man's legacy before Han Guangbei entered the 4th level of the treasury. When the victor's ability to accelerate time began to take effect, Howard wholeheartedly immersed himself in the legacy. Chapter 850. He had to settle the insurance for his daughter last night, so he did not have time to write the 5th chapter. Inside the gloomy Bone City. Haha. Along with an earth-shattering sword aura, laughter filled the Bone City. After the gratified laughter, roars filled with endless anger rang out from within White Bone City. For Guardian Emperors, aren't you guys just worried that my universal massacre sword technique would affect your control over the Tian Xian land after reaching the mastery stage? Now, I already have the most perfect disciple to inherit my legacy. Without any distractions, I have the final determination to break through to Martial Emperor. For Guardian Emperors, just you wait. When I succeed in breaking through to Emperor Wu's level and gather the most powerful sword of Universal Massacre, I will take one of your heads to make up for my defeat. Perhaps it was because the angry roar just now had angered the gloomy skeletons in the city. The countless skeletons that had been quietly crawling on the ground slowly stood up and stared at the white bone tower in the city that was chained up by countless iron chains. Creak! Along with the sound of bones grinding, green flames shot out from the eyes of all the skeletons that were staring at the bone tower. When the dark green flames hit the white bone pagoda, they were not knocked away. In any case, they were absorbed by the chains wrapped around the bone pagoda. The chains that had absorbed the jade-green flames suddenly began to shrink, and the bone pagoda that was suppressing the white pagoda began to shrink. As the white bone tower shrank under the suppression of the chains, a painful scream came from the bone tower. The scream lasted for almost 3 minutes. Then, a weak but hateful voice came from the bone tower. "Venerable Bone, you damn dog. When this true body breaks through to Martial Emperor, it'll be time to extract your spirit flame and help my disciples' spirit flame reach great perfection." Inside the Victor, with the help of the Victor's ability to accelerate time, Howard spent almost 3 hours comprehending the legacy left behind by the gray-robed elder. To be able to obtain the legacy and comprehension left behind by a martial venerable was a heaven-defying opportunity. However, Howard's face did not have a trace of joy for obtaining such a heaven-defying opportunity. There was only a bitter smile mixed with all kinds of complicated emotions. Howard, what happened in the space in the Jade Slip? As the spirit of the victor, Thaling already knew the moment Howard finished comprehending the legacy. He entered the victor's space for the first time and asked anxiously. "Sigh." After a long sigh, Howard said with a bitter smile, "Thaling, there was a divine thought left behind by a peak-level martial venerable in the Jade Slip." After sucking in a breath of cold air, the tower spirit suddenly showed a relieved expression and said, "That's right. No wonder I couldn't tear open the seal of the Jade Slip space, even when I used the power of law. It turns out that there was an expert of such a level hidden in the Jade Slip space. After all, for such a powerful venerable, even if it's just a remnant divine thought, it can still display the terrifying strength of a martial venerable." At this point, Thaling suddenly remembered that Howard did not carry any power when he entered the space in the Jade Slip. Facing the remnant divine thought of such a powerful venerable, how did he escape so smoothly? The senior in the Jade Slip did not have any evil intentions. The reason why he sealed the space in the Jade Slip was because he wanted to take me as his disciple and then accept his legacy. Then, Howard told Thaling everything that happened in the Jade Slip. Howard, I have to say that your luck is really heaven-defying. Even a peak-level martial venerable wanted you to accept his legacy. If those geniuses who have been bitterly searching for the legacy of a powerful venerable knew about it, I'm afraid they would go crazy with jealousy. After hearing Howard's explanation, Thaling could not help but sigh. However, when he saw that Howard did not have the slightest joy of accepting the legacy of a martial venerable, he asked doubtfully in his heart, "Howard, is there a problem with the legacy you accepted?" This was the only reason that could explain Howard's wry smile. "Thaling, the legacy of that senior can be said to be a truly heaven-defying cultivation technique. That's because, by relying on that senior's inherited martial technique, when one's cultivation reaches the peak of rank 9 martial exalted, one can easily kill a quasi-martial emperor. In fact, one can even directly defeat an almighty expert who has just broken through to the martial emperor realm. That's impossible." After hearing Howard's explanation, Thaling's first reaction was disbelief. However, when he thought of the powerful venerable that he had once followed, he immediately asked, "Didn't that person use his own heaven-defying cultivation technique to defeat the Emperor Wu's realm?" "Howard, what is the name of that cultivation technique?" "The Universal Massacre Sword Technique," Howard said word by word. After hearing Howard say the name of the cultivation technique, Thaling immediately tried to recall if there was any Universal Massacre Sword Technique among the tens of thousands of cultivation techniques that he knew. However, he found nothing. Howard, who was the peak of the 9th level martial venerable, since he could not find the origin of the Universal Massacre Sword Technique, Thowling wanted to know who the person who cultivated it was. The Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable. Howard said word by word. After searching through his own memories, Thowling could not find any recollection of the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable. This made him frown. Thowling, don't think about it anymore. You definitely don't know the origin of the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable. Seeing Thowling frown, Howard reminded him with a bitter smile. That's because the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable was a powerful venerable who became famous 3,000 years ago. At that time, you were probably still in the demon god's ancient tomb. The peak of the 9th level martial venerable from 3,000 years ago. After hearing Howard's explanation with a bitter smile, the tower genie stood up due to extreme shock. That's right. Nodding his head, Howard began to tell him about the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable in his inherited memories. In fact, the Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable's fate when he was young was very similar to his own. Originally, he was the only son of a small family and was the heir of the family in name. However, when he was 18 years old, his parents died in an accident. As a result, the elders of the family, who wanted to fight for power, not only stripped him of his position as the heir, he was also demoted to a mining slave. However, his choice was different from Howard's. The Heaven Punisher Demon Venerable did not choose to submit, nor did he choose to endure for a long time. On the 19th day after he became a miner, he used the poison that he had secretly collected while mining to kill over 370 people in the mining area. Then he successfully escaped from the mining area and escaped the influence of his family. Chapter 851. Inside the Victor. Fortunately, his talent and comprehension were far superior to his own. In his precarious adventuring life, not only had his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds, but he had also relied on his own opportunities and comprehension, as well as unimaginable perseverance to create the universal massacre, a technique that was far beyond the heaven rank. Unfortunately, in order to improve his cultivation quickly, he had to consume a large amount of cultivation resources. Most of the cultivation resources in the Tianxian continent were controlled by the top sects and inherited families. In order to obtain enough resources to improve his cultivation, he began to rob and kill like crazy, just like in his previous life. As his cultivation increased, the number of powerful cultivators he had offended increased as well. As a result, when he had broken through to the martial honorable realm, the enemies he had offended were all martial honorables and martial emperors who had long since chosen to live in seclusion. Later on, for some unknown reason, he angered the Emperor Wu of the guardian families of the Tianxian continent. In the end, he attracted the attention of 4 Emperor Wu realm masters, who killed him in a forbidden place. Fortunately, like himself, he had a strong telepathy. When he learned that his life might be in danger, he separated a trace of his own divine sense, which carried his own inheritance and experience, into a blank jade slip, and then gave it to a good friend of his, asking him to help find a disciple who could inherit his legacy. As for why he had not found a suitable disciple, even after thousands of years. Moreover, his divine will, which had been in a deep slumber, did not know why the Jade Scroll had appeared in the Four Symbols sect. I understand now. After listening to Howard's explanation, Thowling finally understood why he was not surprised at all after receiving such a heaven-defying inheritance. Firstly, the Great Mystery Heart Sutra technique that he was cultivating was not inferior to the Universal Massacre technique in terms of grade and effect. Secondly, the Great Mystery Heart Sutra technique emphasized the improvement of one's foundation. The origin energy cultivated was gentle and could nourish one's body and soul, as well as weaken one's inner demons. The Universal Massacre technique, on the other hand, emphasized the rapid breakthrough of one's cultivation level. The origin energy cultivated was extremely violent and destructive. Although it was possible to have the strength to fight above one's level, it required extremely tenacious willpower extremely high comprehension, and extremely high mental cultivation to be able to suppress the danger of the heart demon backlash caused by the rapid advancement of one's realm. If Yu Haoran were to abandon the Supreme Mystery Heart Sutra and switch to the Sword Art of Heaven and Earth Massacre, he would be able to do so. Putting aside whether his body constitution was suitable for cultivation, the impact of the violent elemental energy on his foundation and the change in the nature of his elemental energy was also a loss that he could not bear. The reason why he was able to do so well in the Emperor Qin Kingdom was mainly because of his ability as an alchemy grandmaster. Thirdly, the sword Qi and origin energy cultivated from the Heaven-Earth Slayer cultivation technique were far too unique. Anyone who had come into contact with the Heaven Slayer Devil Venerable would be able to recognize this unique sword Qi. With Yu Haoran's current cultivation and the family behind him, unless it was absolutely necessary, he could not provoke those old monsters who had lived in seclusion for thousands of years. After all, with the awakening of all living beings, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would gradually return. The environment of heaven and earth would gradually become more suitable for those peerless experts of the martial honorable realm. In fact, even those of the Emperor Wu realm would be born. Yu Haoran, logically speaking, whether or not you want to switch to the inherited cultivation technique is your own decision. As a bystander, I have no right to make the decision for you. After understanding the reason why Yu Haoran was in a dilemma, Thowling thought for a moment before reminding him. However, the universal massacre technique was created by the Heaven Slayer Devil Venerable after all. Although it has heaven-defying effects, the technique is not complete. At most, it can only be cultivated to the peak of the 9th grade of the martial honorable realm. If you want to break through the limitations of the technique, you'll have to think of a way to create a follow-up technique. Therefore, you should consider carefully whether it is worth taking the risk. Thowling, what was your last sentence? Yu Haoran, who had been going back and forth between the Great Mystery Heart Sutra and the Universal Massacre Technique, was suddenly awakened by Thowling's last sentence. You should consider carefully whether it is worth taking the risk. Thowling repeated. No, it's the previous sentence. He shook his head. He had a feeling that he could decide his future, so he continued to ask. If you want to break through the limitations of the technique, you'll have to think of a way to create a follow-up technique. Thowling continued to repeat. Create a follow-up technique. Repeating Thowling's reminder, Yu Haoran's feelings gradually became more and more real. He had a clear direction of what path he should take in the future. Thowling, thank you. After getting up, Yu Haoran thanked Thowling solemnly. Then, he left the victor in a flash and replaced his second doppelganger on the 4th floor of the treasury. What's going on? Yu Haoran's baffling thanks caused the pagoda spirit to feel a bit confused. However, from the unique aura that he had just exuded, Thowling knew that his state of mind had just undergone a complete transformation. And this transformation had allowed his state of mind to successfully break through the bottleneck and officially enter the martial saint realm. In the future, as long as he could determine the power of laws that he needed to comprehend, breaking through to the martial saint realm would be a natural process. His gaze shifted from the remaining 4 jade slips to the mental cultivation techniques, martial techniques, and secret techniques on the wooden shelves. He closed his eyes and used his divine sense to check the grades and effects of each mental cultivation technique, martial technique, and secret technique. In the end, he chose nearly 9 mental cultivation techniques, 13 martial techniques, and 6 secret techniques. After transferring the 28 martial techniques and the 6 jade slips to the victor, Yu Haoran walked up the stairs to the 5th floor of the treasury. Just as he reached the stairs and was about to step on them, Han Guangbei, who had just finished choosing the pills, happened to enter the 4th floor. Guangbei, you can choose 10 mental cultivation techniques, 10 martial techniques, and 10 secret techniques. After reminding Han Guangbei of the number of secret techniques that he could choose, Yu Haoran went up the stairs to the 5th floor of the treasury. However, as soon as he entered the 5th floor of the treasury, His eyes were blinded by a dazzling, cold light. He closed his eyes for a while to adjust to it. After opening his eyes, Howard looked at the hundreds of magic tools of different grades and types on the 5th floor of the treasury, as well as the thousands of refining materials. Howard immediately revealed a shocked expression. This is the Thunder Kirin wood that is said to be able to refine venerable level magic weapons. Thaling, who was also shocked by the magic weapons and refining materials on the 5th floor of the treasury, quickly came to his senses and began to use his divine sense to check and collect them. Then, he was completely immersed in the surprise of selecting precious refining materials. This is the Dark Thunder Iron that can be used to refine Saint-level magic weapons. This is the Scarlet Dragon Heart Source Stone that can be used to upgrade the 4 Symbols Concentration Formation flag. Chapter 852. On the 5th floor of the treasury. Every time Thaling exclaimed the origin of a precious material, the confusion on Howard's face would increase. When Thaling picked out more than 20 precious refining materials in a very short time, his frown had already formed a very obvious Chuan character. Howard, what's wrong? Thaling, who had been immersed in selecting precious materials, suddenly felt that the atmosphere was too quiet. He couldn't help but glance at Howard and hurriedly asked when he saw the frown on Howard's forehead. Thaling, don't you feel that something is wrong? Howard reminded him. No. These artifacts and refining materials are all real. Thaling scanned the entire 5th floor of the treasury with his divine sense, but he didn't find anything unusual. Thaling, whether it's in terms of quantity or grade, the artifacts and refining materials in the treasury are not inferior to those of a first-rate sect. The treasury of a mere second-rate sect has artifacts and refining materials that are not inferior to those of a first-rate sect. Don't you think there's something wrong with this? Howard continued to remind him as he pointed at the dozen or so top-grade Emperor artifacts in the depths of the treasury. That's true. Howard's reminder calmed Thaling down from his surprise. He thought about it carefully and also realized that something was wrong. If the 4 Symbols sect has secretly pledged allegiance to a powerful faction, under normal circumstances, the faction supporting them wouldn't just provide artifacts and refining materials. They would also need a large amount of top-grade spirit stones and pills, unless they've accidentally obtained. Without waiting for Thaling to voice his speculation, Howard immediately turned his head and shouted in the direction of the stairs leading to the 4th floor. Guangbei, holy son-in-law. After hearing Howard's call, Han Guangbei hurriedly put down the mystic level 9 mental cultivation method he had just picked and quickly entered the 5th floor of the treasury. Although he was also shocked by the dazzling magic tool in front of him, his gratitude towards Howard made him quickly suppress the greed in his heart and kneel down on one knee. Bring the sect leader of the 4 Symbols sect, Hong Shirtian, vice sect leader Xia, and the second elder here immediately, Howard ordered in a hurried tone. This subordinate obeys. After getting up, Han Guangbei immediately used a movement technique and quickly left the treasury. Howard sucked in a deep breath as he watched Han Guangbei quickly leave the treasury. He gestured for Thaling to continue choosing the materials he wanted. He closed his eyes and began to recall the experiences of his previous life. He wanted to see if he could find any ruins or cave abodes that he had seen or heard of in the territory of the 4 Symbols sect. Not much time passed. Just as Thaling finished choosing the 5th material, Han Guangbei carried Hong Shirtian and the other 2 into the 5th floor of the treasury. Guangbei, continue to the 4th floor and choose a cultivation method. As long as it's something you like, you can take as many as you want. Seeing that Hong Shirtian and the other 2 were still unconscious, Howard squeezed out a smile and instructed Han Guangbei, "Let's go. Holy son-in-law, I'll take my leave first." Han Guangbei, who had already guessed what Howard wanted to do, not only immediately got up and returned to the 4th floor of the treasury, but he also immediately immersed himself in choosing a cultivation method. He wanted to avoid the greed that welled up in his heart and planned to spy on the 5th floor of the treasury. Seeing that Han Guangbei was so tactful, Yu Haoran nodded his head in satisfaction and gestured for Thaling to start searching the memories of Hong Shitian and the other two. Half an hour later, Thaling raised his head and looked at Yu Haoran with a serious expression. Yu Haoran, tell me the truth. What is your true purpose in entering the Four Symbols sect? For a magic weapon of the demonic path that is recovering a demonic treasure that might have been born naturally. Actually, when Yu Haoran asked Thaling to search the memories of Hong Shitian and the other two, Yu Haoran knew that Thaling would definitely discover his true purpose in helping the Northern Army break through the Four Symbols concentration formation and exterminate the Four Symbols sect. Therefore, he did not hide anything and answered truthfully. At least you know your place. Seeing that Yu Haoran obediently answered his true purpose in entering the Four Symbols sect, Thaling's grave expression gradually eased a little. Thaling, let's not talk about that magic weapon of the demonic path for now. Have you found out the true origins of these magic weapons and materials? Seeing that Thaling was no longer pursuing the fact that he had deliberately concealed his true purpose in entering the Four Symbols sect, Yu Haoran hurriedly asked after heaving a sigh of relief. Found it. Nodding, Thaling said with a slightly disappointed expression. But the results are different from our earlier speculation, because these magic weapons and materials came from the Green Hill Foxes. They were part of the reward for exchanging that magic weapon of the demonic path. Thaling's explanation had finally solved a question that had been accumulating in his heart for a long time. In his previous life, when he was captured and tortured in the Four Symbols sect, that magic weapon of the demonic path was almost fully recovered. With the terrifying power of the magic weapon of the demonic path, even Emperor Qin, a peerless powerhouse who had become a martial venerable, would definitely not dare to provoke the Four Symbols sect. However, in less than half a year after he had escaped from the Four Symbols sect, the Four Symbols sect had been easily conquered by the Northern Army. This had always made him wonder why Hong Shitian and the others had not used that magic weapon of the demonic path to threaten Emperor Qin. Now, it seemed that the Green Hill Foxes had taken away the magic weapon of the demonic path as soon as the Four Symbols sect had repaired it. At the same time, Yu Haoran finally understood. In his previous life, the reason why the Four Symbols sect had been able to hold out for so many years under the siege of 100,000 elite soldiers of Emperor Qin's kingdom was probably related to the secret assistance of the Green Hill Foxes. After all, the true strength of the Green Hill Foxes was not much weaker than that of Emperor Qin's kingdom. The origins of the magic weapons and materials on the 5th floor of the treasury were not as he had guessed. Perhaps they were a cave left behind by a master refiner. Having lost all hope, Yu Haoran signaled Thaling to erase Hong Shitian and the other two's memories about the magic weapon of the demonic path. Then, he began to choose the magic weapons before him. Yu Haoran, according to the search of Hong Shitian's memories just now, apart from the three before us, the other people in the Four Symbols sect who know about the secret of the magic weapon of the demonic path are Vice Sect Master Qian, who escaped, and the Grand Elder who went out to search for the blood essence of exotic beasts with the bloodline of divine beasts. Seeing that Yu Haoran had already noticed the importance of keeping the magic weapon of the demonic path a secret, Thaling hurriedly reminded him. Thaling, don't worry. Yu Haoran smiled and comforted Thaling when he heard that Thaling was worried that the news of the demonic path's treasure would be leaked. With General Qi's strength and speed, I believe that he will definitely be able to capture Vice Sect Master Qian alive. When that happens, just erase his memories about the magic weapon of the demonic path. As for the Grand Elder of the Four Symbols sect, you don't have to worry about him either. Chapter 853. On the 5th floor of the treasury. Yu Haoran suddenly recalled that in his previous life, he had witnessed with his own eyes the tragedy of a powerful race that was not inferior to a first-rate sect being annihilated in just an hour under the joint attack of the Jade Virtual Palace and the Family of Inheritance. His tone was somewhat depressed as he lamented. After all, if the seven top forces and the inherited families knew that the Green Hill Foxes had been secretly repairing the demonic Tao's ultimate ritual implement, I'm afraid that they would be in danger of being annihilated. That makes sense. Fowling couldn't help but nod after hearing Yu Howren's consolation. Then, like Yu Howren, he continued to choose materials from the treasury. Although the Green Hill Foxes were offering the mystic weapons and refining materials on the 5th floor of the treasury as part of the payment for repairing supreme treasures of the demonic path, the Foxes' cunning and cautious nature meant that most of the hundreds of mystic weapons they gave out were at the level of emperors and kings. Not only were there only 7 saint-level ritual implements, but all of them were offensive ritual implements. After inspecting the items from beginning to end, Yu Howren chose 4 saint-level ritual implements, 11 emperor-level ritual implements, and 5 emperor-level ritual implements. After choosing the ritual implements that he liked, he saw that Fowling was still immersed in the selection of materials. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to comprehend the Heaven Slayer Demon Emperor's sword technique. Although he didn't plan to cultivate the mental cultivation method of universal retribution for now, he wouldn't give up on the Heaven Slayer sword technique that went with it. This was because the Heaven Slayer sword technique was also a set of sword techniques that surpassed the heaven level and could challenge those of a higher level. Time ticked by. Fowling, who was immersed in the selection of materials, only stopped when he had chosen a total of 160 materials of different grades and types. Yu Howren, with these materials that I have chosen, I can begin to help you refine a defensive ritual implement that can also be upgraded continuously. Fowling, who had returned to his consciousness, said excitedly to Yu Howren, a defensive ritual implement that can be upgraded continuously. When he heard that Fowling was going to refine a defensive magic tool for him, an idea that had been dormant in his heart for a long time resurfaced. After pondering for a while, Yu Howren finally decided to reveal the idea that had just emerged in his mind. Pagoda Spirit, I have some ideas on how to refine defensive artifacts. Go ahead. Fowling replied casually as he sorted out the materials he had just selected. I want to refine a defensive Dharma artifact in the shape of a copper bell. Yu Howren clenched his teeth as he revealed the shape of the defensive Dharma artifact he wanted to refine. What? Fowling abruptly stopped sorting out the materials and asked as if he didn't hear clearly. I want to refine a copper bell-shaped artifact that has both physical attack and defense, as well as spirit attack and defense, Yu Howren explained further. Yu Howren, can you tell me why you have such thoughts? Fowling asked with a serious expression as he waved his hand and sent all the materials to the top floor of the victor. Because I have seen a ritual implement of this shape in my previous life. Yu Howren answered truthfully. Yu Howren, tell me, where have you seen a ritual implement of this shape? Fowling, who had instantly left the sea of consciousness, roared with an extremely agitated expression. Fowling, don't be so agitated. First, he used his spiritual sense to take a look at the 4th floor of the treasury and discovered that Fowling's uncontrollable roar did not disturb Han Guangbei, who was immersed in selecting a mental cultivation method. He secretly let out a sigh of relief and motioned for Fowling to calm down first. Fowling, who had realized that he had lost control of himself, flashed back to Yu Howren's sea of consciousness and took a few deep breaths. His tone was still somewhat agitated as he asked, Yu Howren, you must tell me where you have seen a bell-shaped ritual implement. The dense fog forest, one of the top 10 forbidden areas in the Tianxian continent. After saying the name of the place, Yu Howren continued to explain. Fowling, actually, I did not see the ritual implement itself. It was just that in a palace in the dense fog forest, in a memory left behind by a powerhouse of unknown cultivation, I saw that the ritual implement possessed a heaven-defying offensive and defensive power. After listening to Yu Howren's detailed explanation, Fowling closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing for a while. When he opened his eyes again, his tone was filled with sadness as he said, Yu Howren, I promise to help you refine a ritual implement of this shape, but at most I will only refine the embryo of the ritual implement. As for what grade the ritual implement will ultimately be able to advance to, it will depend on your own luck and the fate of the bronze bell embryo. Okay. Without the slightest hesitation, Howard hurriedly nodded in agreement. His original plan had been to trouble the weapon refining sex master to help him refine the embryo of the bronze bell. Then, he would use a secret refining method that he had obtained in his previous life, which was both simple and complicated, to continuously improve the grade and power of the bronze bell ritual implement. Now, Thowling was willing to help him refine the embryo of the bronze bell ritual implement. He was more than happy, so how could he refuse? 5 days. Give me 5 days, and I will refine an identical bronze bell ritual implement based on the shape of the one you saw. After receiving Howard's agreement, Thowling nodded and gave him a time limit. Thowling, thank you for your hard work. After thanking Thowling, Howard walked back to the pile of ritual implements and picked out 99 ritual implements of the lower, middle, upper, and supreme grade of the Grandmaster realm. He then picked out 73 ritual implements of the lower, middle, upper, and supreme grade of the King realm, as well as 9 ritual implements of the lower, middle, upper, and supreme grade of the Emperor realm. Thowling didn't ask much about Howard's actions. He only did his best to adjust his emotions so that he could refine the perfect embryo of the bronze bell. Guangbei, seeing that Han Guangbei was still immersed in the selection of cultivation techniques, Howard knew that if he did not wake him up in advance, Han Guangbei would have gone through all the several hundred cultivation techniques on the 4th floor of the treasury. Using his divine sense, he quickly pulled Han Guangbei's mind away from the techniques. Putting away the techniques he had just read, he quickly walked over to Howard. 1 Saint stage, 2 Emperor stage, 5 King stage, and 20 Master stage. After giving Han Guangbei the number of ritual implements he could choose from, Howard stepped into the 6th floor of the treasury. However, when he arrived at the entrance to the 6th floor of the treasury through the stairs, he was blocked by a layer of gray energy shield. A profound demon sealing formation. With a single glance, Thowling in his sea of consciousness knew the origin of the formation that blocked Howard from entering the 6th floor. However, he didn't intend to break it himself. He only asked Howard to inform his second clone. Chapter 854. At the entrance to the 6th floor of the treasury, Brother Ran, after receiving Thowling's order, Howard immediately called out to his second doppelganger in the victor. Give me 4 minutes. The second doppelganger instantly appeared at the entrance of the treasury and carefully observed the formation. Then, after being given a specific time, he immediately began to crack the dark demon sealing formation in front of him. 3 minutes and 55 seconds. As the gray energy shield disappeared, the dark demon sealing formation that prevented him from entering the 6th floor of the treasury was successfully cracked. Looking at the second doppelganger that silently returned to the victor and continued to practice the formation, Howard was pleasantly surprised by the progress of the second doppelganger. He also lamented that he did not realize his amazing talent in formations before. Facing the dark demon sealing formation, Thowling gave him 5 minutes to crack it, and the second doppelganger gave him 4 minutes. But in the end, he only used 3 minutes and 55 seconds. This meant that the second doppelganger's formation cultivation was rapidly improving at every moment. Moreover, this speed of improvement was not inferior to his own improvement in martial arts and alchemy. Taking a deep breath, Howard suppressed the joy in his heart and stepped into the 6th floor of the treasury. The 6th floor of the treasury was very spacious, but there was only one treasure. It was a 7-tailed black flag that was the size of an adult's palm and was floating in the air, constantly absorbing the wisps of black gas that seeped into the treasury from all directions. The soul-severing flag can use its aura to kill the opponent's divine soul from thousands of miles away. It is indeed a demonic treasure from the ancient times. Looking at the black flag floating in front of him, Thowling could not help but exclaim, "Thowling, how can I put away the soul-severing flag?" Although the soul-severing flag in front of him did not have the terrifying pressure of an honorable or emperor celestial artifact, It emitted an aura that could injure the divine soul, making it difficult for him to get close to it. Yu Haoran, if you want to get close to the soul-severing flag and successfully refine it, your divine soul body must reach the profound realm. In other words, you can only use the soul-severing banner when your cultivation reaches the peak of the 9th level of the martial monarch realm. I know that, but what I want to know now is how to take the soul-severing banner. In response to Thaling's warning and the experience of his soul almost being devoured by the soul-severing banner in his previous life, he had studied the soul-severing banner and knew the cultivation requirements to refine it. It's very simple. Use the law of time contained in the victor to open up layers of space and move the soul-severing flag into the victor. Thaling, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it. Yu Haoran hurriedly said when he heard Thaling's suggestion. Step back first. After instructing Yu Haoran, Thaling used a part of the life force contained in the turtle shell to directly activate the law of time in his own domain. Then, using the overlapping layers of space formed by Victor, he slowly moved the soul-severing flag into the Victor. Just as Thaling successfully stored the soul-severing flag into the Victor, a terrifying aura immediately rose from a mountain range of green trees, green grass, and green stones about 7 million miles away from the Four Symbols sect. As the terrifying aura rose, thousands of white foxes with different numbers of tails immediately flew out of the green mountain range. Among them, a white fox with 7 tails that looked like pillars that supported the sky screeched a few times at the terrifying aura rising from the mountain range. 3 seconds later, as the terrifying aura disappeared, an old and weak voice sounded from the depths of the mountain range. The soul-severing banner's aura has disappeared. Immediately send experts to the Four Symbols sect to investigate the cause and whereabouts of the soul-severing banner. Yes, Patriarch. The 7-tailed white fox respectfully responded and turned to give orders to 3 other white foxes that also had 7 tails but were slightly smaller. Bai Zhua, Bai Yu, Bai Fei immediately head to the Four Symbols sect and find Bai Ge. Let her lead you to investigate the cause and whereabouts of the soul-severing banner. Yes, Patriarch. The 3 7-tailed white foxes responded and immediately left the Green Mountain Range, heading in the direction of the Four Symbols sect. Seeing that the soul-severing banner had been successfully transferred into the victor, Yu Haoran's heart was filled with endless joy. The soul-severing banner could not only use the opponent's aura to kill the opponent's soul from thousands of miles away, but could also help to increase the power of the soul. Although the conditions to increase the power of the soul were rather cruel, in the face of countless enemies, this method was just going with the flow. It was far from being as cruel as the devilish cultivators. Taking a deep breath and suppressing the joy in his heart, Yu Haoran turned and left the 6th floor of the treasury. He directly called for Han Guangbei, who had just finished choosing his artifact, to leave the treasury. Under the leadership of the 4 9th-grade martial saints, Lan Rong, Li Quanqing, Lin Yuanxiang, and Gao Hai, it only took them 2 hours to successfully kill and capture most of the elders and disciples of the Four Symbols sect. When Yu Haoran brought Han Guangbei to the main peak of the Four Symbols sect, which was also the peak of sect master Hong Shiqian's faction, Lan Rong was waving his fingers to count the number of disciples they had captured alive. Greetings, Prince Consort. When he saw Yu Haoran walking towards him with a faint smile on his face, Lan Rong hurriedly took a few steps forward and knelt down on one knee to greet him. General Lan, there's no need to be so courteous. Please rise. Yu Haoran gestured with one hand to support him. Then he looked at the thousands of disciples who were tied up in the square and asked with a smile, "How's the battle situation?" In response to your question, apart from around a dozen elders and deacons who have cultivated concealment techniques, all 53,600 people from the Four Symbols sect have been killed or captured alive, Lan Rong replied in an extremely excited manner. Actually, one could not blame Lan Rong for being so excited. Assisting Yu Haoran in breaking the Four Symbols spirit condensing formation was a great merit. Killing and capturing all the people of the Four Symbols sect was another great merit. Moreover, from the enemies they had killed or captured alive, they had obtained countless cultivation resources. Such a bountiful harvest was far more than the previous two great merits. However, after Lan Rong excitedly described the battle situation, he was surprised to see Han Guangbei standing beside Yu Haoran, who could not control the joy in his heart. His excitement instantly turned into intense jealousy. He had originally wanted to kill the chicken as an example to the monkey. Who would have thought that by chance he would become the captain of the Prince Consort's guards and be highly regarded by the Prince Consort? Judging from his uncontrollable smile, he had probably gained a lot from following the Prince Consort to the treasure trove. Guangbei called General Li, General Lin, and General Yuan over. I have something to tell them. Yu Haoran glanced at the square in front of the main peak and did not see the figures of the other three generals. He turned his head and ordered Han Guangbei. Chapter 855. Four Symbols Sect, Sect Master's Peak. General Lan. Has General Qi returned? Although the 50,000 elite soldiers that had attacked the Four Symbols Sect had not forgotten Qi Weixian's direct subordinates, without the leadership of their own general, the rewards of his troops were far less than Lan Rong's direct subordinates. Therefore, Yu Haoran wanted to make it up to Qi Weixian. Seeing that Yu Haoran had not forgotten Qi Weixian, Lan Rong was deeply moved and hurriedly explained, in reply to the Emperor's son-in-law, General Qi returned half an hour ago. He's now leading 8,000 elite soldiers of his direct subordinates to sweep through the Four Symbols Sect's peak factions. Where's Vice Sect Leader Qian? Lan Rong's explanation did not mention Vice Sect Leader Qian that Qi Weixian was pursuing, so Yu Haoran immediately asked. After all, Vice Sect Leader Qian was also someone who knew the secret of the soul-carrying banner. Dongzi, go and bring Vice Sect Leader Qian's body over. Hearing Yu Haoran's question, Lan Rong hurriedly ordered a lieutenant who was counting the captives. Then, he turned his head and knelt down on one knee to beg for forgiveness. Because he did not complete the mission that the Emperor's son-in-law had ordered, General Qi originally planned to beg for forgiveness in person. However, this subordinate considered the feelings of General Qi's soldiers. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, this subordinate made the decision to let him lead the soldiers to sweep through the spoils of war and appease any dissatisfaction that might arise in the hearts of the soldiers. Without the consent of the Emperor's son-in-law, I used my military power without authorization. I am willing to accept military punishment. General Lan, you did very well. There's no need to beg for forgiveness for me. Yu Haoran smiled and comforted Lan Rong as he reached out to help him up. At the same time, he had made his final decision after leaving the army in the north. Then, he turned his head and ordered Han Guangbei immediately inform General Qi to come over. Yes, Han Guangbei immediately used his divine sense to inform Qi Weixian. Butcher whose hands are stained with blood, why do you want to destroy our Four Symbols sect? Just as Yu Haoran was waiting for the four generals to arrive, an extremely beautiful girl suddenly stood up from the bound disciples of the Four Symbols sect and called out. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to stand up. However, when Lan Rong saw the girl's appearance, his face immediately darkened as he glared at the elite soldiers responsible for tying him up. General Lan, everyone loves beauty. You don't have to punish them for this trivial matter. Yu Haoran advised with a smile as he reached out and patted Lan Rong, who was about to explode in rage. Prince Consort, this subordinate will definitely discipline them properly after this matter. I guarantee that this subordinate will not make this kind of mistake in the future. Although Yu Haoran didn't make the same mistake as his own elite troops, as their commander, he couldn't underestimate the prince's kindness. He quickly knelt on one knee and promised. Shaking his head, Yu Haoran didn't say anything more. He walked up to the girl and asked with a smile, "Weren't you questioning me just now as to why I destroyed your Four Symbols sect, right?" Perhaps it was due to her feelings of despair, but when facing Yu Haoran, who even a ninth-grade martial saint expert had to treat with caution, the girl replied without the slightest fear. "That's right. Little girl, what I want to tell you is that losers don't have the right to speak, let alone question a general who controls 100,000 soldiers." Yu Haoran's smile was instantly replaced by a gloomy expression as he reprimanded sharply. Faced with Yu Haoran's sudden change in attitude, even though she was affected by her feelings of despair, the girl's instinctive fear made her subconsciously take 2 steps back. Yu Haoran couldn't help but sigh softly when he saw that the girl had been scared away by his sudden change in attitude. His gloomy expression eased a little, and his tone was no longer as harsh as before. "Girl, what's your name?" "Shueli." Perhaps it was because Yu Haoran's harsh reprimand had caused the girl to feel extreme fear, but she obediently answered his question. "Shueli, how old are you this year?" 18. "How did you become a disciple of the Four Symbols sect?" "Master passed by my family when he was traveling. After discovering my outstanding talent, he brought me to the Four Symbols sect and became an inner disciple of the Four Symbols sect's Purple Peak Mountain." "What's your current cultivation?" "Peak 9th level martial warrior." When mentioning her cultivation, Shueli's tone was filled with pride. "Have you ever gone out to train?" Yu Haoran smiled and continued to ask. "Master said that my cultivation is too low, so it's not suitable for me to go out to train," Shueli said somewhat dejectedly. Yu Haoran didn't go forward to comfort her, nor did he continue to ask. Instead, to everyone's surprise, he suddenly began to talk about his life experience. "My surname is Yu, and my name is Haoran. I was born in the Yu family of the Emperor Qin's Pingyang City." Ignoring the puzzled and doubtful faces of the people present, Yu Haoran continued. "My father is the patriarch of the Yu family, and my mother is a martial master expert. Thus, when I was 12 years old, I successfully became the heir of the family. But the weather is unpredictable, and the weather is unpredictable. 2 years ago, when I turned 16, my parents were killed in an accident. After losing my parents' protection, the Grand Elder, who regained control of the family's power, not only demoted me to a servant who fetched water and chopped materials, he also forbade me from cultivating any cultivation methods or martial arts. The thousands of generals present from the Emperor Qin's kingdom only knew that Yu Haoran came from a small family in a remote city. They never knew that he had suffered such a miserable and humiliating life. Thus, their puzzled expressions were immediately replaced by sympathy and admiration. At the eastern edge of the plaza, Qin 13, wielding his spear, quietly took out a blank jade slip and used a special secret technique to record Yu Haoran's narration. "My life as a servant who fetched water and chopped materials lasted nearly a year, and the humiliation, beatings, and curses I suffered were innumerable. But it was precisely because of this humiliation that I deeply understood a principle." Speaking of this, Yu Haoran looked directly at Shirley, whose eyes were slightly red. In a world where the strong are revered and strength reigns supreme, the fist is the only truth. Reason, humiliation, pleading, and tears always belong to the weak. "Shirley, you just asked me why I wanted to destroy your Four Symbols sect, so I'll tell you now. Because our Emperor Qin's kingdom is powerful. Because we want to fulfill our ambition of conquering the world. We will destroy any faction that stands in our way with thunderous might. And your Four Symbols sect is a tiger that stands in the way of our conquest. Thus, we can only destroy you, the tiger in the way." Yu Haoran suddenly took a step forward when he saw the anger in Shirley's eyes. Chapter 856. Four Symbols Sect, Sect Master Peak. Faced with Yu Haoran's questions, Shueli couldn't help but take 2 more steps back before squatting down and sobbing. The sect that had doted on her, loved her, and nurtured her had been exterminated by Yu Haoran's army. She ought to avenge her sect and master. However, Yu Haoran's humiliating self-narration just now, as well as his naked exposure of the law of survival of the fittest in this world, made her unable to hate or resent this young man who wasn't even as old as her. At this moment, it seemed that crying was the only way to vent her grievances. Shueli, according to how my Emperor Qin deals with captives, a female disciple without standing looks like you will either be given to a meritorious subject as a slave, or your cultivation will be crippled and you'll be turned into a military prostitute. As he looked at the sobbing Shueli, Yu Haoran knew that her heart was close to breaking down. All he needed was one final blow to achieve his goal. Thus, he ignored the sobbing Shueli and hardened his heart to threaten her. Slave, military prostitute. When she heard that her fate was only these two tragic choices, the extreme fear in her heart caused Shueli's face to instantly pale. She raised her head and looked at Yu Haoran. Her eyes were filled with despair, and there was a trace of begging. Shueli, this prince consort is not a cold-blooded and bloodthirsty person. I can't bear to see you end up in such a miserable state. The pleading in her eyes told Yu Haoran that this was a desire to live that had emerged from her heart after all despair. If he could give her hope for a new life, then the gratitude she would feel would not be any less than that of saving her life. This was also the result he had hoped to achieve by reprimanding her and recounting his humiliation. So, this prince consort will give you a chance to choose. Shueli's desire to live expanded without being reduced to a slave or a military prostitute. She dropped to her knees and looked at Yu Haoran with pleading eyes. Recently, Princess Ling Fei plans to form her own Fire Phoenix team. This prince consort can recommend you to participate in the selection, but whether or not you can pass the selection will depend on your own luck and hard work. In fact, Ling Fei's idea of forming her own personal guards had been brought up by Princess Ru Ling, who had come as a guest not long after the engagement ceremony. As for the original intention of forming the Fiery Phoenix Squad and what they wanted to accomplish, Yu Haoran did not know, nor did he want to know. After all, to be able to form a personal guard that completely belonged to her, not only could it reduce her longing for him, but it could also protect her safety. He wholeheartedly approved of it. Of course, if he had only wanted to recommend a genius to Ling Fei, he would not have needed to go through so much trouble, even going so far as to talk about his humiliating experiences in his youth. What Yu Haoran really wanted to achieve was the young disciples with a certain amount of talent and potential in the square. Thank you for your grace, Prince Consort. Thank you for your grace. Even if I have to risk my life, Shueli will pass the selection held by Her Highness. To be able to become the personal guard of Her Highness the Princess of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, this status and treatment far exceeded that of an inner disciple of a second-rate sect. Faced with Yu Haoran's offer of a choice, Shueli kowtowed to express her gratitude while expressing her determination. His gaze shifted from Shueli to the people in the square, and then he slowly rose into the air. When he was about 10 meters above the ground, he stopped and used his soul force to envelop his voice so that his next words could be clearly heard by the thousands of captives in the square. This prince consort has already said that I am not a cold-blooded and bloodthirsty person, and I can't bear to see you geniuses end up being beheaded or even reduced to slaves. Now, this prince consort will also give you a chance to choose. Shueli's twists and turns in fate were also affecting the people in the square. This was especially true for the young people with a certain amount of talent and potential. They didn't want to die, and they certainly didn't want to be humiliated as slaves. Thus, when they heard Yu Haoran give them a chance to choose, they immediately looked up at Yu Haoran floating in the air. Female disciples can participate in Princess Ling Fei's selection like Shueli. Male disciples can choose to join the Northern Army and obtain the status of a true soldier through meritorious service. I'm willing. After Yu Haoran gave them a choice of different fates, the square was immediately filled with fierce responses. In response, Yu Haoran only chuckled before landing next to Lan Rong and the others. Prince Consort, this subordinate is completely convinced by you. Lan Rong sighed as he looked at Yu Haoran's young and tender face. As captives, the influence of hatred and humiliation made it very difficult for these people to submit, let alone become a new source of soldiers for Emperor Qin's kingdom. Under normal circumstances, no more than 10% of the thousands of disciples in the square would be willing to surrender through various threats and promises. Moreover, even after surrendering, there was no guarantee that they would be 100% loyal. However, Yu Haoran's narration and threats had not only successfully resolved the hatred in the hearts of most of the disciples of the Four Symbols sect, but they were also willing to join the army and become soldiers who could bathe in blood. Given the current situation, apart from the elders and deacons, the vast majority of the young disciples would become his loyal subordinates. How could Lan Rong and the others not be completely convinced by this method of turning something rotten into something miraculous? Generals, in any case, this prince consort has already made up his mind. As for how many people you can win over in the end, it'll be up to you. The heartfelt admiration from Lan Rong and the others made Yu Haoran feel great, and he could not help but tease them. Han Qing, you idiot, what are you standing there for? Hurry up and do it. Yu Haoran's teasing reminder made Han Guangbei the first to react. He immediately scolded the officer who was watching from the side. This subordinate obeys. Han Qing immediately came back to his senses from the scolding and the reminder in his eyes. He immediately called for his subordinates and began to make all sorts of promises and benefits to the disciples who were willing to become soldiers in order to rope them in. Although Lan Rong's reaction was not as fast as Han Guangbei's, most of the soldiers in charge of guarding and counting the captives were on his side. As a result, when they saw Han Qing snatching the disciples who were willing to join the army, there was no need for Lan Rong's reminder. Other than a few elite soldiers guarding the edge of the square, everyone else joined in the struggle. Chapter 857. Four Symbols Sect, Sect Master's Peak. Yu Haoran ignored the chaotic fighting in the plaza as he turned and spoke to the five generals. Five generals, it's all thanks to your help that we were able to successfully break through the Four Symbols God-gathering formation and destroy the Four Symbols Sect. Haoran thanks everyone. Yu Haoran thanked them sincerely as he clasped his hands. Emperor's son-in-law, you're too courteous. This is something that we should do, Lan Rong, who is closer to him, said on behalf of everyone. Five generals, seeing that you've helped me so much, I've decided to take out all the treasures and resources in the Four Symbols Sect's treasury as a reward. Yu Haoran suggested with a smile as he raised his head to indicate that Lan Rong did not need to be modest. Hearing Yu Haoran's suggestion, Lan Rong and the others could not help but gasp as they looked at him in shock. Even though Yu Haoran and Han Guangbei had already swept through the Four Symbols Sect's treasury, with Yu Haoran's foresight and Han Guangbei's caution, they had probably only taken away a small portion of the most important treasures. As such, it was unimaginable just how shocking a second-rate sect collection would be after 10,000 years. Now, that Yu Haoran had decided to give all of this to the five people present as a reward, how could they not feel shocked? Emperor's son-in-law, this subordinate is extremely grateful for your trust and kindness, but doing this will violate the Great Qin's military laws. Apart from feeling shocked and moved, Lan Rong and the others had to consider Yu Haoran's situation. According to the laws of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, all spoils of war had to be reported to the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Rights, the Ministry of Personnel, and the court. The Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights would come up with specific rules based on the merits of the battle, and they would redistribute the spoils based on the merits. However, based on centuries of practice, the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights had a conscience if they could give out 10% of the resources they collected as rewards. Therefore, no matter how reluctant he was, Lan Rong rejected Yu Haoran's suggestion after briefly communicating with Li Quanqing and the others through his eyes. Are you sure you don't want it? Yu Haoran asked with a frown. We can't harm the prince consort because of a moment of greed, Lan Rong replied firmly. Prince consort, these are the treasures this subordinate picked from the treasury. I will hand them over to you now. Lan Rong and the others' refusal to accept the reward from the treasury made Han Guangbei suddenly think of the merciless military law and the ugly faces of the people from the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Appointments, and the Ministry of Rights. although there was only him and the prince consort when choosing treasures. As long as the prince consort did not take the initiative to say, then no one had the right to ask if he had touched the treasures in the treasury. However, if he did so, it was very likely that he would bring trouble to Yuhaoran. Therefore, after much consideration, Han Guangbei finally gritted his teeth and took out the treasures and resources he had picked just now to show that he had the same attitude as Lan Rong and the others. Generals, to tell you the truth, even if you don't want the spiritual stones, medicinal herbs, elixirs, cultivation methods, celestial devices, and refining materials in the treasury of the Four Symbols sect, I don't plan to hand them over to the Imperial Court, let alone the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights. Han Guangbei's unexpected action reminded Yu Haoran of the Emperor Qin's rule about collecting spoils of war. However, he knew very well that the people from the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights were insatiably greedy. How could they be willing to give away the treasures and resources they had worked so hard to get to those people? So, this prince consort will ask you one last time. Do you want the reward in the treasury or not? Yu Haoran put away the smile on his face and asked in a sharp tone. Seeing that Yu Haoran was really angry, Lan Rong and the others hesitated. Fine. Although Lan Rong and the others refused to accept the resources in the treasury for their own good, Yu Haoran was still very angry at their indecisiveness. Since you don't want it, I'll destroy it all. Not even a strand of hair will be left for them. I want to see if the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights dare to touch me. At this point, Yu Haoran directly rose into the air and headed straight for the treasury. Quick, go, and stop the prince consort. Yu Haoran gritted his teeth just now. It was obvious that he was not joking. He probably really wanted to destroy the treasury. Therefore, Lan Rong, who was the first to react, quickly reminded him. Boom! However, just as Lan Rong and the others rose into the air to stop Yu Haoran, they heard a deafening roar from the treasury. This is bad, Lan Rong thought to himself, and quickly increased his speed. However, when they arrived in front of the treasury, they discovered that Yu Haoran, who had transformed into a large Power King Kong ape, was brandishing his purple rod and smashing it into the treasury. At this moment, looking at the treasury that had been more than half destroyed, Lan Rong and the others immediately revealed expressions of regret. If they had known that the result would be like this, they would have accepted Prince Consort's suggestion from the start. This way, they would be able to obtain substantial benefits and also share some of the responsibility for him. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. Following the collapse of the last wall, the Four Symbols sect's treasury that had been erected for 10,000 years was completely turned into a pile of ruins. After dispersing the large Power King Kong ape transformation, Yu Haoran, who had returned to the ruins of the treasury, did not stop moving. First, he took out the pill furnace from his storage ring, then used his elemental energy to drive the pill furnace's fire, directly refining the ruined treasury into a pile of ashes. Looking at the ashes of the treasury, Lan Rong immediately recalled Yu Haoran's words before he'd begun his assault. He wouldn't even leave a strand of hair for the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights. Withdrawing the pill furnace's fire, Yu Haoran cast a dissatisfied glance at Lan Rong and the others, then soared into the air and returned to the square of the sect head's peak. He scanned the entire square and finally spotted Qin 13 at the edge of the square, wielding an azure spear. Noticing Yu Haoran's gaze, Qin 13 couldn't help but secretly pray that Yu Haoran wouldn't walk toward him and expose his identity. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to leave the army of the North and switch to a new mission. Unfortunately, his prayers weren't answered, because Yu Haoran, who discovered him, was already walking toward him. Prince Consort. Qin 13 shook his head and called out with a wry smile, stabbing his spear into the hard ground. Although he knew that his current actions were inappropriate and would certainly expose Qin 13's true identity, he was in a bad mood and ignored Qin 13's wry smile. Chapter 858. In the pavilion of the sect master's residence. Holy son-in-law, can we go somewhere else? Qin 13 couldn't refuse Yu Haoran's tyrannical behavior, so he could only suggest with a wry smile. Come with me. Yu Haoran raised his head and looked at the surroundings. In the end, he chose a pavilion not far away. After giving a reminder, Yu Haoran walked toward the pavilion. Qin 13 couldn't help but sigh when he saw the strange and shocked expressions on the faces of Lan Rong and the others in the center of the square. He followed Yu Haoran into the pavilion. Let's begin, Yu Haoran ordered after Qin 13 entered the pavilion. Upon hearing Yu Haoran's instructions, Qin 13 took out a small and exquisite bell from his sleeve. He channeled his soul force and elemental energy into the bell and gently shook it. However, the bell didn't make any sound. There was only a very weak fluctuation of spatial energy. Yu Haoran, this is a special spatial teleportation magic tool. It's very similar to the storage ring you're using now. Thaling, who'd been awakened by the fluctuations of spatial energy generated by the bell shaking, observed it with his consciousness and learned the specific structure of the bell in Qin 13's hand. The only difference is that there's a type of celestial crystal inside the bell that can teleport in both directions. It can allow two different spatial magic tools to teleport instantly. Thaling, can you refine a magic tool like this? Yu Haoran asked excitedly when he heard Thaling's relaxed tone. If Thaling could refine a magic tool like this, then he'd be able to contact Ling Fei at any time, no matter where he was. This way, he'd be able to resolve his longing for her and put her at ease. Yu Haoran, as long as you can take out the celestial crystals now, I will refine a teleportation Dharma treasure that is even better than this bell within an hour, the pagoda spirit said mockingly. Then forget it. Hearing Thaling's request, Yu Haoran immediately gave up on the idea of refining a teleportation artifact. After all, heaven crystals were a special kind of crystal that was several hundred times rarer and more precious than space crystals. Not to mention that he could not take it out now, even in his previous life when he had explored so many ruins and forbidden areas, he had never seen even a thumb-sized celestial crystal. Prince Consort, I've already contacted Lord Wan Sui. 3 minutes later, the bell in Qin 13's hand vibrated on its own. He immediately reminded them with a solemn expression. 13, you just need to repeat my words. Yu Haoran took a deep breath after receiving Qin 13's reminder. Your Majesty, I'm in a very bad mood right now, so I took out the treasury of the Four Symbols sect to vent my anger. If the officials from the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Envoys, and the Ministry of Rights want to hold me accountable, Yu Haoran, you'd better stop them. Otherwise, the purple staff in my hand will not recognize anyone. Prince Consort, is this appropriate? Qin 13 asked in trepidation after hearing what Yu Haoran wanted him to repeat. Repeat it to me word for word. Yu Haoran ordered sternly, glaring at him. All right. Qin 13 nodded, closed his eyes, and began to repeat what Yu Haoran had just said. Xianyang City, in the study of the Imperial Palace. Lord Wan Sui, isn't Prince Consort going too far? Qin Yi, who was suppressing the dissatisfaction in his heart, immediately complained with an indignant expression after repeating Qin 13's words. Going too far. Emperor Qin was stunned for a moment when he heard Qin Yi's complaint, then explained with relief. This is Prince Consort's temperament. This is the Prince Consort's personality. You just have to get used to it in the future. Then, Emperor Qin shouted outside the study, Steward Jiang, Lord Wan Sui. Steward Jiang immediately entered the study. Ask Marshal Meng to warn the Ministry of War. Ask Prime Minister Yin to warn the Ministry of Appointments and the Ministry of Rights. Tell them not to provoke the Prince Consort. The Qin Emperor ordered. This old servant will arrange for someone to invite Marshal Meng and Prime Minister Yin. Although there were more than 30 princes in the great Emperor Qin Empire, as long as it came from Emperor Qin's mouth, it could only be Yu Haoran. The other princes didn't have this honor at all. Therefore, there was no need for further questioning. Steward Jiang immediately bowed and left the study. After Steward Jiang left the study, Emperor Qin ordered Qin Yi. Qin Yi, tell Prince Consort that the Ministry of War, Ministry of Appointments, and Ministry of Rights will never cause trouble for him. If those people don't listen to Marshal Meng and Prime Minister Yan's warnings, he can do whatever he wants. This emperor will pretend to turn a blind eye. Sectmaster Peak, Wind Pavilion. After repeating Qin Yi's words, Qin 13 looked at Yu Haoran in shock. He didn't expect that Yu Haoran's rebellious words not only didn't anger the emperor, but also blocked the trouble from the Ministry of War, Ministry of Appointments, and Ministry of Rights for him. 13. Tell His Majesty that the murderer who abducted Great General Guyu is a seven-tailed white fox from the Green Hill Fox clan. Ignoring Qin 13's shocked expression, Yu Haoran continued. After dealing with the Four-Symbol sect, I will hunt down that seven-tailed white fox and see if I can rescue Great General Guyu. Prince Consort, are you sure that the murderer who abducted the Great General is a seven-tailed white fox from the Green Hill Fox clan? Qin 13 asked with some excitement. As a spy planted by Emperor Qin in the Northern Army, Qin 13 had to monitor the movements of the dozen or so generals in the Northern Army to prevent any of them from betraying the army. His most important task was to protect the army. Ever since Guyu was abducted by an inexplicable woman, Qin 13 had been investigating the woman's origins, but he hadn't found any clues. This made him feel both guilty and angry. This Prince Consort never lies, Yu Haoran promised, glaring at Qin 13 with dissatisfaction. Prince Consort, when you go after that seven-tailed white fox, can you take this subordinate with you? Ignoring Yu Haoran's dissatisfied glare, Qin 13 asked solemnly. What are you going to do? Yu Haoran asked, puzzled. This subordinate is going to skin that fox and pull out its tendons, Qin 13 said through gritted teeth. Ever since Great General Guyu went missing, Qin 13 had been unable to find any clues about his opponent. Although His Majesty and Qin, he didn't blame him. He had been blaming himself in his heart. He wanted to track down his opponent and give His Majesty, Qin Yi, and himself an explanation. All right, Yu Haoran nodded, sensing Qin 13's hatred for the seven-tailed white fox. Chapter 859. Xianyang City, in the study of the Imperial Palace. Bang! Damned seven-tailed Arctic fox. This emperor will destroy your Green Hill Fox clan sooner or later. After hearing Qin Yi's retelling of Yu Haoran's words, Emperor Qin, who was enraged, slammed his left hand on the desk. With a powerful sound, the hardwood desk was directly torn apart. Steward Jiang, who heard the sound, hurriedly entered the study to take a look, then immediately retreated. In less than 3 minutes, an identical wood desk was placed in front of Emperor Qin. After a few minutes of adjustment, Emperor Qin, who had temporarily suppressed his anger, ordered Qin Yi. Qin Yi asked the Prince Consort if he needs my help. Your Majesty, the Prince Consort said that he will only take 13 with him. Qin Yi, who received Yu Haoran's reply from Qin 13's retelling, hurriedly replied. In fact, with the Prince Consort's methods, as long as he doesn't encounter a quasi-martial supremacy who has passed the second-layer tribulation, no one can do anything to him. After hearing Qin Yi's retelling, Emperor Qin muttered to himself. Then, he raised his head and ordered Qin Yi. Qin Yi, tell the Prince Consort that he must hunt down that seven-tailed Arctic fox. This emperor wants to see the fox, dead or alive. Sectmaster Peak, Wind Pavilion. 13. Tell His Majesty that this Prince Consort can only promise to do his best. It had been so long since Guyu had been abducted. Who knew where the seven-tailed Arctic fox was hiding? What if she returned to the Green Hill Fox clan in fear after learning that the Four-Symbol sect had been destroyed? Would he be able to chase her all the way to the Green Hill mountain range? Prince Consort, His Majesty asks you to do your best. Qin 13 slightly changed the tone of his retelling and risked a reminder. The reason why he took the risk of changing the tone of his retelling was that Qin 13 found that Yu Haoran didn't seem to be very enthusiastic about hunting down the seven-tailed Arctic fox. This made Qin 13, who was bent on capturing the seven-tailed Arctic fox alive and giving Emperor Qin and Qin an explanation, give up. Therefore, he could only take a risk and give it a try. Fortunately, Yu Haoran did not notice his abnormality and only nodded, indicating that he would do his best. Then, he continued, 13. Tell His Majesty that Ji Qingyu of the Northern Army has repeatedly offended this prince consort. He even violated military law to provoke this prince consort. That's why I'm going to make an example out of Ji Qingyu. Prince consort, Ji Qingyu's younger sister, is the emperor's most beloved concubine. It seems that she will be conferred the title of empress in a few days. Look, upon hearing that Yu Haoran planned to make an example out of Ji Qingyu, Qin 13 couldn't help but warn him. He knew Ji Qingyu's background and knew the situation in the capital at all times. 13. You should know my personality. Ji Qingyu's sister hasn't been crowned empress yet. Even if she was, I'd still kill Ji Qingyu. Yu Haoran said fearlessly when he heard Qin 13's warning. All right, seeing that Yu Haoran had made up his mind, Qin 13 didn't warn him anymore. He repeated his words to Qin through the bell in his hand. Xianyang City, in the study of the imperial palace. Upon hearing that Yu Haoran planned to make an example out of Ji Qingyu, Emperor Qin fell silent. After nearly 3 minutes of silence, he raised his head and shouted outside the study. Steward Jiang, Emperor, has the imperial edict conferring Ji Qingyu the title of empress been issued? Emperor Qin asked. Replying to Emperor, it has been stamped with the imperial seal. It will be announced to the world tomorrow morning. Steward Jiang, who was in charge of drafting the imperial edict, immediately replied, burn the imperial edict. Don't mention the conferment of empress in the future. Emperor Qin ordered coldly. After Steward Jiang left the study, Qin pondered for a long time. In the end, he let out a long sigh and said nothing. At this moment, he could already see that Emperor Qin's regard and love for his son-in-law had exceeded the ordinary father-son-in-law relationship, even surpassing the relationship between father and son. The two seemed to be in a position of complete equality. Fortunately, Yu Haoran wasn't the imperial son of the Grand Qin Empire. Otherwise, with the emperor's high regard and favor towards him, there wouldn't be the slightest suspense in the competition for the throne. After dealing with the empress affairs, Emperor Qin thought of the Ji family, who had deep influence in the military. He was worried that they would secretly send people to ambush Yu Haoran. In the end, he decided to take the responsibility himself. Qin prepare the imperial edict. The Qin emperor instructed Qin as he stood up and picked up the wolf fur on the table. After Qin laid out the imperial edict, Emperor Qin closed his eyes and mobilized the power of law he had just overcome. When he opened his eyes again, he wrote the word behead on the yellow silk. Have 13 hand the imperial edict directly to Ji Qingyu. Emperor Qin ordered after returning the wolf fur to its original place and sitting back on the dragon throne. Yes. After rolling up the imperial edict, Qin used the bell in his hand to transmit the edict to Qin 13. Sect Master Peak, Wind Pavilion. Emperor Qin do you think this subordinate should deliver the imperial edict to Ji Qingyu now or continue to listen to your orders? Qin 13 asked respectfully after receiving the imperial edict from the bell. Wait a moment. Yu Haoran shook his head. I only have one more thing to do now, and I need His Majesty to give me a decree. Qin 13 put away the imperial edict and immediately assumed a posture of listening attentively. 13. Now that the four symbols concentration formation has been broken and the four symbols sect has been destroyed, ask His Majesty if he should arrange for someone to take over the Northern Army. After all, this emperor's son-in-law still has his own matters to attend to, Yu Haoran said, as if intending to hand over power. Emperor Qin are you sure? Qin 13 asked in disbelief. Of course. Yu Haoran nodded affirmatively. Emperor Qin The Northern Army's 100,000 elite soldiers are very strong. They can be said to be Emperor Qin's most elite army. Are you really willing to give them up? Qin 13 asked, still in disbelief. 13. This emperor's son-in-law's ambition is not in the army. Even if 1,000,000 elite soldiers were under my command, this emperor's son-in-law wouldn't be moved, let alone 100,000 elite soldiers, Yu Haoran explained with a smile. Seeing that Yu Haoran wasn't greedy for power in the army, Qin 13 sincerely admired him. Emperor Qin Yi, there are very few people in this world that I, Qin 13, admire. Apart from the emperor and Qin Yi, you are the third. Xianyang City, Imperial Palace Study. Emperor Qin Yi, you're an amazing man. After repeating Yu Haoran's words, Qin Yi also sighed in admiration, just like Qin 13. Qin Yi, now you know why I think so highly of and dote on the emperor's son-in-law. Emperor Qin, who is equally happy in his heart, said with a smile. This subordinate understands. Qin Yi nodded her head sincerely. Tapping his fingers on the table, Emperor Qin began to consider who could take over the Northern Army. But no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't find a suitable candidate. In fact, it wasn't that there wasn't a suitable candidate. The main reason was that after breaking the Four Symbols concentration formation and wiping out the Four Symbols sect, the Northern Army's campaign would be smooth sailing for a long time. Whoever took over the Northern Army at this time would get this great merit for free. As for the few suitable candidates, Emperor Qin didn't want them to get this easy military merit out of thin air and gain more power. Therefore, after finding no suitable candidates, Emperor Qin finally asked for Yu Haoran's opinion. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.